There you he was. That's what
Okay.
I understand.
So,
Yeah. I love my new seat. I
I don't know
know.
what this time is, but we can go ahead and start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5. We have quorum.
New perspective. I like the seating arrangement. Okay. Yeah. I said I've never sat there before. Sitting on the end is fine. You can throw candy at Mr. Ball. I like the beam on. He doesn't have candy though.
I think we'll go ahead and start.
You guys got the candy dish, that's good.
Okay, that's fine.
No, I'm not asking for it. Although I will, as long as you're
Hey,
facing.
girl. Where are you? Okay, well, hey, we're going to go ahead and get started, and then when you get here, we'll break in and say that we want to make note. No, you're fine. Okay, bye. Okay.
And she's probably out in the back building.
Okay. I would like to announce that a quorum is present. The meeting is duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time is now 6:03. The following board members are in attendance: Tracy Miller, Allison Lasan, Angie Cox, Kronda Timish, Catherine Sells. Would someone like to lead us in prayer? Ms. Timish?
Dear Heavenly Father, we just come before you and just thank you for the many gifts that you've given to our teachers and our students and our administration this year. We just pray for those that are on vacation through this summer. We just pray that you'd watch over and protect them. We also pray for the families that they don't always know where their next meal is coming from. I just pray that there'd be opportunities for them to be ministered by those in our community that can serve them and meet those needs. I just pray that you would give us eyes to see the needs around us. And I just pray for wisdom and discernment as we meet tonight, that we would just be directed by your thoughts. And we just lift all of this up in your son's name. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Timish. And now we'll move on to Dr. Rapp.
All right, good evening. So this evening we are talking about our four cornerstones I statement is I go above and beyond to serve. I seek business and community partnerships to engage students to build relationships. And I'm going to ask Ms. Brim to share a little bit about Back to School Fair on this note.
So the Back to School Fair, as you guys know, is an event that really impacts families across our district.
Is it on?
And we are really excited to share a little bit of information about that event with you guys tonight. It is scheduled for August 3rd from 9 to 2 at LHS Main. Students will have the opportunity to receive a new backpack, school supplies, new shoes, vision exams, sports physicals, immunization, haircut, and information on programs that may be able to help them with different services that they may need. Based on our projections right now, we estimate that we will serve over 5,500 families this year. As of May 23rd, about 4,000 students were registered, and the deadline to register is at the end of this month, so we continue to promote that out in the community to get the word out. Whenever I received this information at the end of May, we had about 300 volunteers signed up, but that number continues to grow all summer long as churches get more involved and send the information out on our behalf. Historically, we've had about 800 volunteers serving, and we expect that number to be in that range again. And then we have, as far as sponsorships, LEF continues to help us bring in those different sponsorships. We continue to send people to them to help kind of route those sponsorships to us. We have about 25 corporate sponsors that are scheduled to help us for the event. And then there are all sorts of different local community groups and churches and organizations who are donating backpacks and supplies and contributing in a different way that may not be just a straight monetary contribution. There are a lot of in-kind donations that take place as well, and we're continuing to seek those out and accept those opportunities from our community partners. So we're really excited. It is a great day. I hope all of you can come out at least for a little bit and just watch the work that goes on. It's just a tremendous collaboration between our community, the families that we serve, and our staff members. So we're really excited to do that for another year.
Thank you, Ms. Brim. And one other announcement we wanted to share, since there's not a meeting in July, we also have, it's going to be coming onto your calendars, August 6th from 11:30 to 1 at the Hilton Garden Inn will be our business partnerships lunch that Ms. Ayers and Ms. Seeley are helping to organize and working with LEF on that as well. So that'll be coming through on your calendars. Ms. Rigg will be putting that on there also.
Ms.
One-
Sills, Madam
Yes.
President, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Ms. Bram, so if we want to sign up, how should we do that so you'll know what time we're going to be there during the day or
Through
to
that
help?
volunteer link, and I can send that out to you guys
Could
if
you
y'all
send
want to
that to
have
the
that.
board, please?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Thank
we can
you.
send that out. Sure.
Perfect. Anything else from anybody? Wonderful. And thanks to Dr. Rapp for filling in Dr. Rogers' seat tonight as he is enjoying a much-needed vacation. So moving on, our discussion items, and Dr. Rapp, you're up again.
Yes, all right. So I'm going to ask our second step team members that are here this evening to help present this information to go ahead and come on up. And as they get to their seats, just to share a little bit of information about the second step program. Before we get started, I'm going to want each one of them to introduce themselves to all of you so you can know who you're hearing from this evening. And they've got
Do we have enough seats?
packets. I think so.
We've got two more seats. No, two more seats. Oh, here's.
Good evening. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Monia Crow. My name is Ann Lakeview.
Sorry, we're still working on getting seating done.
Hi, I'm Tina Kroll. Hi, Leslie Mitchell, principal at Highland Village.
Shakia Easley, Lamar counselor. Aaron Walter, Highland Village Elementary School counselor.
All right, and then we have Ms. Godby and Ms. Litchfield here we're rolling up chairs for as well. So we are all going to be part of this presentation this evening. Primarily myself, Ms. Crow, and Ms. Leahy will go through the slides, but we know that you're probably going to have some other questions and information that you want to find out, and this esteemed group around the table is going to help us out with that. Basically, how did we get here about second step? So when we met on October 9th to talk about the elementary academies presentation, one of the things that came up was the conversation about leadership academies. And you've got this PowerPoint in your folder as well, in your manila folder, just to point that out also. And so as a result of the conversation that happened at that October 9th board work session, the question was asked by the board members, what about elementary leadership everywhere? That leadership is so important for our students that how could we do something that would help impact all kids and not just be necessarily part of an academy approach? So after that October 9th meeting, myself, Ms. Godby, Ms. Litchfield, Ms. Crow and Ms. Leahy and Ms. Gall all met to debrief what we heard that night. And we discussed how the content of leadership programs really focus on a combination of character and pro-social skills. And you see those skills listed on the slide. Character and leadership programs really overlap when we're talking about self-reliance, students taking initiative, managing their emotions, being considerate of others, developing themselves as strong citizens, understanding what it means to cooperate with others, have courtesy, effort, patience, perseverance. All of those things are hallmarks of both character programs and leadership programs. We surveyed the elementary schools to determine what type of character or leadership programs do they have in place. We got a variety of responses. We got back Second Step, Capturing Kids' Hearts, Leader in Me, No Excuses You, Rachel's Challenge, Great Expectations, the Great Kindness Challenge, and then some schools do assemblies, one-time learning events, or a campus-created program. And so what we started talking about was how Second Step is a resource we've had in the school district a long time. And when we realized that schools were using this to develop leadership and character in their students, we decided it was time probably to take a fresh look at a resource that's been around for a while. And so what we'd like to share with you this evening is how a new focus, a renewed focus on Second Step, we believe will help address the leadership skills that you all were requesting be addressed with all of our students at all 40 elementary schools.
So we'll start with some of the tenets of the program. One of the benefits of Second Step is that it is research-based, and it gives a whole lot of background and data points for us to reference as we look at doing this systemically. In addition, it comes with training for all staff, and along the way, it has a lot of webinars at their fingertips so that they can brush up on best practice to implement their classrooms. It is certainly something that the counselors and teachers can do collectively, which helps create more of a culture rather than it just being a standalone lesson. It is very systemic in that it can be implemented in a similar way to our academic curricula. It does come with a principal toolkit, which is a really nice ancillary piece for principals because it is designed specifically for their role and how they can also then make sure that this is something that is happening campus-wide. It is also delivered in both English and Spanish. It aligns with several other practices that we know are really good and that we use as well in LISD, and we've put the side-by-side of some of these in your folder. One of the things that's impressive about Second Step is they do not market it at all as a standalone, this is the only thing that's going to work or make a difference. They actually advocate that you use it with other things like restorative practices, trauma-informed classrooms, PBIS, and then MTSS. And I will point out also that from a legislative perspective, these are also pieces that are in some of the current legislature that's looking to have Governor Abbott sign. And we currently implement at various locations our restorative practices, PBIS, and certainly RTI. It's affordable because we already possess the curricula. And again, any of those teaching pieces, the staff support pieces, all of that comes free of charge. It is certainly something that continues on in middle school because this is a pre-K through 8th grade program. It allows us to not only address leadership at elementary, but continue to build upon these skills and reinforce them once students get to middle school. And then finally, it's comprehensive because it has support pieces designed for every role on the campus. It also has some support designed for ancillary roles such as ESD and bus drivers. So each grade level has 4 core pieces, and that is skills for learning, emotion management, empathy, and problem solving. And within each of those is a variety of lessons, and Ms. Leahy's going to cover that.
So we wanted to give you a little taste of a grade level. So we just randomly chose the second grade level. We did bring the second grade kit with us if you actually want to put your hands on the kit and see what comes in it. But here's an overview of all the lessons the kids learn for the year. So it not only includes leadership skills, but those pro-social skills that are just necessary for everyday living. It includes in the first unit being assertive, learning how to properly be assertive and being respectful. In Unit 2, it talks about confidence and showing compassion for others. Unit 3, managing anger and managing anxious feelings, handling making mistakes. That can be a difficult thing to learn. And finally, in Unit 4, problem solving is the overriding theme of that unit. So taking responsibility, responding to playground exclusion, all of those could be leadership skills that our kids can show. So what's on the left is that's a picture of all the included curriculum. It comes with a large amount of things. Not only is there the kit with all the scripted lessons, there's also a book list, which we included the K2 book list in your packet, in your blue folder, so you can see. So the teachers can provide that rooting experience that we want. It's not just the one lesson that happens every so often. It's going to be an everyday thing. When the teachers pull out the book and relate it to, we just learned about communication. Here's a book on our level that we can use to kind of reinforce that skill. Also, an important piece is our home piece. Not only do the skills have to be incorporated into the elementary curriculum, on a daily basis, it needs to go home as well so the parents can understand what we're doing. So they have, excuse me, these home link cards, and teachers will be able to send those, or excuse me, counselors and teachers will be able to send those out as they complete a lesson. They can cut and paste. I know several teachers do like their own newsletters that they like to send home. They can cut and paste out of the home link card and put it into their newsletter and put it into their own format. Another piece that I'm very excited about, I know how much you guys have loved, as we all have, the Ask the Expert series, and we've found, because just on Facebook alone, we're right about over 40,000 hits on those this year. The parents want that 1 to 2 short-minute video that they can watch while they're at the volleyball game or while they're at the soccer game, wherever they are. Second Step also recognized that, and they have developed a website, parentteenconnect.org, that has very similar type videos. So counselors will be able to go out in there and pull just one link out and send that home in their newsletter. The teachers will also have follow-through cards. So there's the lesson that they will teach, but then it gives them a scripted follow-through so they can provide that rooting, that micro-learning that we want to happen with every pro-social skill. These follow-through cards, the lessons are about 5 minutes each, so they're very easy for a teacher just to drop in wherever the day that they need to drop them in, and they're pre-scripted for them. So another ancillary resource is the Stories of Success, and I wanted to share one with you. We had a student at one of our elementary schools this year who received one of the pieces of curricula is the Child Protection Unit from Second Step, and it addresses how to keep their bodies safe. And so she was recently new to our country. She'd only been here a few months and speaks Spanish. And so the lesson was delivered to her in her native language. And as a result of that, one of the stories in there really resonated with her, and she was able to come forward and she was able to outcry that she was in an unsafe situation. And so the counselor made the proper report, and a few months later, the student came back to her and said, I really liked that I got to see that, and that I knew that there were other kids that were going through what I went through, and it made me have the courage to come forward, and I feel safe now, and the perpetrator was removed from the home. And so that's a huge success story when we're teaching our kids and showing them examples of their peers being able to protect themselves. And so that was certainly something that we were really glad it was a result of utilizing this curricula. Another success story is our two counselors just returned from the Leadership Institute for Second Step and shared how a lot of implementation comes from our students that maybe are not quite as invested or connected, that they are able to be selected and be leaders in classrooms of younger grades and go in and help those students learn some of these pro-social skills by them being leaders and teaching it to them. So as a result of us kind of getting together and realizing that we wanted to take a fresh look at Second Step, we realized it was really important to get all the stakeholders involved. So we created a focus group and design team, if you will, and for next year, Second Step will be implemented at these 7 pilot campuses. So we met in January to kind of review what Second Step had to offer and what pieces we maybe were not accessing. From there, we looked at what current practices are and any other resources that were being utilized. From there was the development for, okay, what does this need to look like for us to fully implement at these 7 campuses? And then the final meeting was to review all of those pieces and prepare the final plan. So next steps. So we will have this Second Step implementation a bit more systemic at these 7 pilot campuses with a focus on those 5 tenets. So we're going to make sure the delivery is consistent. We're going to make sure that we are partnering with teachers, because we know if a counselor comes into a classroom to do a 20-minute lesson and then the teacher's not there and they come back in, there's not that transition and the ability for that learning to be carried over. We will make sure that our principals have access to that toolkit, so they also have the resources. We're going to utilize a lot more of the ancillary resources that we mentioned earlier. Intentionality with those home pieces and with the follow-through cards, so that we know, again, these lessons are not standalone. We're talking about these skills on a daily basis. And then finally, we're going to make sure that we collect data. Second Step does have a lot of data from implementation in school districts where they have taken a sample population who had a pretty high rate of behavioral referrals. They've implemented this curriculum and they've compared later and they've seen a drastic reduction in those office referrals. So we will certainly be collecting our own data and outcome measures as well. We intend to collaborate and reach out to PTA to see how maybe they could be supportive of it. And
And then finally, our goal is that we will have district-wide implementation in all 40 of our elementary campuses in August of 2020.
And so with all of that being shared, we're happy to take questions at this time. I know that one of the things we are most excited about, and that was one of the pieces they included for you in your blue folder, is just that example of these stories that go with what really are pro-social leadership, character development skills. And so the fact that, I know this question came up sometimes about, well, do we need to write our own curriculum, or is there something out there that we could take advantage of that's not recreating the wheel? And this is a case where we really firmly believe that there's no need to recreate the wheel, that these resources are very much worth this fresh look and this new implementation of them. So with that said, at this time, we'd be happy to take any questions about this.
Thank you all for that presentation. I think we'll start with Ms. Cox.
Madam President, do you want us to ask one question or all of our questions?
You may ask all of yours.
Okay, I have 5 questions. So my first question will be, will we be incorporating this with our bus drivers, parent meetings, ESD? Because that's really an integral piece to develop the leader as a whole, no matter what state they're in. So
That certainly is our plan, is to offer that training to the staff of ESD as well as bus drivers.
okay, and how does that work?
Well, the benefit of this is that it's really already provided for us. It's something that if we were to provide to the ESD staff and the bus drivers what the topic is for the particular time, then they will have follow-through opportunity. And when they see an interaction between kids and kids say, guys, isn't the skill for this week empathy? And there's a series of steps. Remember, you look at the person, you speak what you need to say, or whatever the series of steps are. And so we want to make sure they have that to address behavior, because we're all seeing it in our variety of arenas. And now we'll have an opportunity to be consistent in how we intervene.
And so who will make sure, like, first student follows through with their, okay, awesome. Okay, that's great. I'm very excited about that piece of it.
Yes.
So when do they learn these lessons? Like, is it incorporated with the current curriculum, or, and how do they get incorporated?
So the beauty of this also is just that there is time already built in, because one of the mandates of counselors is just to be able to get into the classroom and do those guidance lessons. And there's a lot of partnerships already with teachers being a part of it. So time's built in. These lessons run about 20 minutes. And so they have the ability to get in there, and then those supplement lessons are only 5. And so it is definitely something that's already in the mix.
So the counselors are teaching these lessons, or?
It's kind of a variety right now. Some counselors and some teachers. And so we're just going to add that partner piece to it so that they're both in there and able to carry over from one role to the next.
That's great. Okay. And then how will we incorporate this with our community and schools that are on our campuses, because this is an integral piece, and they're doing Leader in Me lunches and all that, so this falls right into line with what they're doing on their campuses.
So one of the things the committee talked about was to sit down with Second Step and some of the scope and sequence, and also any existing leadership program that you were using, and see how they overlapped, so that you can say, okay, this week the skill is this, and Leader in Me luncheon is focusing on this, so we're going to make sure we're doing those at the same time. So we definitely want to encourage them to sit down and make sure that they're overlapping this with anything else they're using. And honestly, we looked at a lot of them, and the tenets are really similar.
I guess my point is we're going to incorporate communities and schools in our...
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, absolutely, because I think that's important too. Okay, and then the last piece was on the collecting the data. How is that going to be reviewed? Who's going to be reviewing it, and then who's going to be sharing it with what? What are we going to be doing with that?
So one thing that exists now is all the counselors do an accountability project for the year. And so it is to take one particular goal and collect data along the way using a specific plan and approach. And then they present that to me at the end of the year. And so for these 7 campuses, this will be their accountability project. So we'll start with the plan, how they're going to do it, how they're going to execute it, what tools they're going to use, and then they'll compare data on behavior and office referrals, the classes that they're going into with it before and after.
But so will it be reviewed throughout the year? I guess I'm just trying to understand. So if there needs to be some redirection or something with the students, that you can implement some more of these training.
Absolutely. One of the things that Ms. Leahy will be doing is getting regularly with these 7 campuses to kind of see how we're going at their various mile markers, so that we can make sure we're all on the same page.
I'm very excited about this. Thank you so much.
Ms. Timmich?
All right, thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I guess I'm not completely clear. What are we going to do with the campuses that have one of these other programs in place? How does that look for them?
It's it's very complimentary. So it's certainly not an effort to say, okay, here's the thing now that you need to do. As I mentioned, we reviewed a lot of these after we surveyed the campuses, and we found that there's a lot of overlap. You know, each of the programs addresses how to manage conflict, how to disagree, how to respectfully make a request, etc. So we're going to get with the campuses that have these other programs and make sure that they're overlapping. If our skill for the week is this, how is Capturing Kids' Hearts or Leader in Me also going to address that? I'll give you an example. One of the themes of one of the other programs, like restorative practices, is a treatment plan. We all decide how we're going to treat each other, and then we stick to it. And so when you give a second step lesson on empathy, you can refer back to, okay, wait, let's talk about our treatment plan. Remember, we've agreed we're going to treat each other like this, and that includes having empathy for each other and seeing another person's perspective. So there's an opportunity for us to marry these really significantly.
At the end of the day, though, this will be the foundation leadership skill development program. So while schools may have other leadership approaches they're doing, they won't get to not do this one because of this, because it will be the leadership curriculum for all the schools. So that way we can ensure there's consistency.
Thank you, because that's what I was trying to figure out, because I'm like going, that just seems like a whole lot of work. If you're a principal on campus and you're running 2 programs and you're trying to fit, and I get the overlap, but you're still, that's a whole lot of work. So at the end of the day, they're going to either have to do a whole lot of work to keep both of these, or they're just going to whittle it down just to.
Because one of the things we know that's important no matter what curriculum you talk about is that students could move from any school, and we've got a common sequence when it comes to these skills. It doesn't matter how often they move back and forth across our district. If we're learning empathy in one school and they move to another one, guess that conversation still picks right up. So they will have to do some extra work if they choose to continue to do a program on top of this one.
And so how are the campuses that have some pretty significant success with these other programs, how are those principals with the buy-in? Like, I mean, just, it seems like if you've really built up something and the whole campus has bought into it, how are we going to work with that partnership and that transition?
We thought about that when we chose the schools in the pilot, because we knew that we needed to have people who were having different things going on be part of the pilot so that we could get feedback about how is this program working with what you're already doing. So that'll be part of working through the pilot with them.
Okay, thank you. And then, and I also had a question about the bus drivers, but mine was just a little bit different. Like, I appreciate that they would have an understanding of, you know, what this was to talk to the students, which I love, but also some of what we're talking about is also just, I think, great skills to have as an adult who interacts with kids. And I think that that's an issue that maybe sometimes we hear a lot about on social media. And so I really want to ensure that when we're communicating this to our bus drivers or to other people, that sometimes it's easy to think, oh, I'm going to be teaching this to the kids, and we forget that if I don't know this and I'm not living this, the kids aren't going to do it. So how are we going to connect to make sure the adult in the room is first owning this?
Part of that will come in our staff training. Again,
and I'm talking bus drivers and ESD,
sure.
like ancillary staff.
We've had the benefit of getting in front of ESD before because we train them on all of our protocols. We've taught love and logic to them before, just kind of a approach. And so we also have the opportunity to get back in front of them fairly regularly with this concept so that we could give them, again, almost that booster learning in the same way that we're going to do those micro lessons with the students. We know that we'll need to do that with the staff as well.
And we'll do that potentially with cafeteria and other.
We certainly could. We hadn't thought of that, but yes, we certainly could. We hope that they're incorporated into the all staff training that we do regularly, but we certainly could work with them in a different vein if we needed to.
Okay, because I think once you have this ownership, I think those are just those pieces where somebody really become flashpoints, and it's a very small piece of the LISD community, but I think it can add up. Okay, and then for the resource for parents at home, it's my understanding that can be either like a piece of paper or it's embedded in the email. Do we have a way of tracking how often parents are actually opening up these resources and using them? I mean, if we're sending this out and we're spending time, I mean, it looks great to say it's going to 52,000 parents, but if 0 are opening up these resources, I'd want to know that.
I know that we have analytics that we use when we use like a SMORE, a format or something like that. So we could certainly look at providing that as the option to get some of this out in addition to paper, because we'd be able to track it then.
Okay, because
because I just want to make sure that as we're communicating this with parents, I think this is a great opportunity, but at the same time, I don't want to create work if it's not a resource that parents see a value. All right, that's it, Ms. President.
Mr. Miller?
Thank you. Ms. Timmers told a couple of my points here, but I'll elaborate on them. But thank you for responding to what we were looking for and putting some effort behind this and organizing it. Just a question from my own naivete. What's a trauma-informed classroom?
It's a perspective that is awareness that we have kids coming to us that have been through incredibly traumatic experiences. And so it's a sensitivity to look at behavior from the why they're doing what they're doing and not just the what. So it really trains staff on making sure that while we want to certainly address behavior, hold kids accountable and teach them the proper way to handle situations, that we're not missing the opportunity to work with the student from the perspective of why are they acting like this in the first place. So it addresses the behavior, but it also addresses why they're doing it.
Okay, so this would be kind of like campuses that may not have some expertise in early childhood trauma, but equipping teachers to identify some of those. I'm thinking in some specific things, right? I mean, so that's great. This seems to be broader and in topics, but more inclusive. So to some degree, we're organizing Be Kind, Restorative Practices, Leader in Me, and adding to it, right? Is that?
I think that's a fair perspective.
Okay.
Sure.
I think the question of transition implementation, the pilot campuses, you talked about that. One of the things, I visited a campus recently, Ms. Godby, you know that campus, and what I loved is that the pre-K PPCD teacher, I guess, who did the tour for me because the campus leader was preoccupied, it was end of year, awards, was able to kind of proactively bring up the leader in me at that campus. And I thought that was a really good example of kind of making sure that everybody could communicate what was going on and how it impacts the students and teachers and families. So it sounds like that is kind of a consistent theme here, where we're looking to kind of inoculate the entire system with proficiency around the broad topics, but yet the depth of each one. Right? Would things like the Leader in Me go away, or you're going to still keep them for a period of time or indefinitely?
Yeah, I think right now we're not trying to undo anything that a campus has started in terms of one of those programs. What we do believe will happen, without having been through the pilot yet, but we've kind of talked about, we think that where those schools will start to see the benefit of every school having a common approach to this conversation in this language, and that's not something, if you've been doing Leader in Me, you have. And if a new kid comes, you have to start from square one with onboarding them. So I do think campuses will start to see some benefit from that common language across all the schools. What they'll decide to do in the long run about Great Expectations or Leader in Me, will work through that with them, but they're going to get a benefit from just having that common language district-wide.
Okay, good. I think while it was great that some of these programs were brought on by campus leaders, they had some kind of local autonomy to do that. If you think about the last 4 or 5 years where we've come with different programs, this is a great opportunity to kind of integrate that. So I love the idea of cafeteria workers and maybe even staff on campus that deals with facilities or custodial. Anybody that comes in contact with a student or a parent, because, so like recently I heard an example where a student's account had expired in the cafeteria. This was not a student that was on free and subsidized lunches, and the way that student was dealt with, this could be a one-off, right? But that's again an opportunity for us to display customer service skills and kind of eliminate some shame that might be associated with the fact that their parents are paying, but they still have some. So I love adding that, and every touch point. That was kind of my last thought. Would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Lasan?
Okay, so your list here on the front of just different schools that are doing different things. Is there a school that's currently using Second Step? What schools are those?
So they all have access to the curriculum.
Okay.
And they all
Okay.
utilize it to a certain degree. I
Okay.
think what our goal here is to look at streamlining that and making sure that we're getting the most out of it.
Got it.
By adding in a lot of these ancillary pieces that it has to offer.
Okay. Second thing, you mentioned middle schools, and I didn't see a middle school on the pilot. So what are your thoughts on that? And
So right now, our middle schools all have access to it as well, and I think certainly we would love to think this would matriculate up, but I think knowing that a lot of the concerns started from the elementary perspective and leadership skills and wanting to make sure we were giving them access to it, that we thought we would start there.
okay. But they will be on this, because some of this stuff, they could really use, middle schoolers. So, but they are going to be included in this, and I just sort of hope that they would be part of the push, that we're doing with elementary schools. Yes. Okay. And so I guess the other thing I want to understand a little bit is, so Second Step, like, how does this work as far as cost-wise? I understand we already sort of own it. Is it, do they update it? I mean, how does that work? Do we pay a licensing fee every month or every year, or what?
So at the elementary level, it's paper pencil kits. So
Okay.
each campus has that already.
Okay.
And so the support pieces are all part of the package. The webinars that occur regularly, the scripted PowerPoint to train staff, all of that is included. At the middle school level, they have paper pencil kits as well, but there also is a digital option, and we have several of our middle schools that have jumped on board with that, and that's where the licensing piece comes in. But for right now, elementary, there's not an annual fee for anything until at what point the kits were updated and we made the choice to do so.
Oh, okay. So we've had how old are these kids?
They were here before I got here. I want to say maybe 6 or 7 years.
Okay. Is that something that we need to look at, possibly updating them? Oh, look at your face.
I think at what point that these fully become obsolete, certainly we want to make sure. Right now, we know that the content is still current.
Okay.
But at what point that we feel like it's not relevant anymore, then we definitely would want to look at that.
Okay. And so I guess, do you have any idea of what the cost would be? I mean, I'm just curious here, just like what we're looking at.
I think we looked at the cost so right now we have the whole pro-social curriculum, and then we have 2 other that go with it that are a bully prevention unit and a child protection unit. And for all 3 of those, it runs about $4,000.
Okay. For the whole district?
No.
For just a kid?
Because you've got an entire curriculum for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, so it's a very large kit.
Okay, so a large kit, but that's enough for all of our schools?
It's enough. One kit is that 4,000 would be for one campus.
For one campus, okay. So we're talking about if we were to update kids, it would be pretty significant. I see. Okay, so we've already made this investment district-wide, and so, okay. I just wanted to understand it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hassett?
Oh, sorry.
Pardon me for being late, first of all. And I'm going to reiterate, just to go back on the 7 other different programs that we're currently using. So who actually is going to make sure that all 7 align? That seems like a lot of work too for staff to have to align all 7, although we want campuses to have autonomy on what they're doing. So who actually makes sure that this part of Regional Challenge works with this part of all of the campuses that have it, rolling up, not just to the 7. So how does that work?
I think as Dr. Rapp mentioned, certainly the expectation is going to be that Second Step is the foundation piece, and we'll certainly have support from our assistant chiefs, supporting principals to make sure that that's implemented that way. From there, if a campus says we want to try it, we want to keep this here, we've invested in it, and there are some campuses that are doing these conjunctively, then we want to support them in doing that. But again, if it were to become overwhelming, the expectation is that we're at least getting the Second Step pieces done.
So who would determine it's becoming overwhelming?
I think that's probably a collective, if you will. We're going to provide the counseling support, but our assistant chiefs would certainly be able to have the communications with the principals as well. At what point we'll do check-ins regularly. Again, we mentioned kind of these mile markers. And so we will be looking for several things. How are we doing? Is it overwhelming? What's working? What's not? Are we getting all of these pieces accomplished? So our intent with the pilot and choosing a smaller number of campuses is so that we could provide that regular support.
Another question, accountability projects, can we see the results of the accountability projects?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Be great information. And also for data sharing, this is a box kit. Do we share any student information outside of the, so it's chest? Timeline, why wait until January? The January was the timeline of next year?
No, that was the meetings that we had this year.
Okay, so it's okay. Got it. So we are going to be fully functional next year. That's
With the pilots.
with, yes, the 7. Okay, on that.
Are you done? Are you finished, Ms. Hassan?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I just have a couple of more. The parent resources, how many languages are they offered in?
I think right now they're in English and Spanish. I don't know of any additional languages. Do you?
They're currently working on the Asian pieces, but it's because of so many different dialects that right now they really want to focus on English.
How do we on a campus level not miss the opportunity for those parents that maybe English or Spanish are not an option?
I think we have to be intentional about that. You know, I think, again, with a small number of pilot schools, one thing we will have to sit down once we get rolling and say, what are your languages that you've got at your school? And then what are our current methods for communicating for parents? You know, I know we have a really good relationship with the Chin Ministries and Becky Nelson. And so, you know, using any of the resources that we currently have to communicate with parents, we would want to parlay into that system to make sure we were getting them access to this as well.
I don't want anybody to be missed. I do like this, and I'll say that even though they're 6 or 7 years old, some of this kindness is always in style. It doesn't matter, you know, how old the curriculum is. The ancillary piece with the bus drivers, how does that actually occur? Because they're hourly, and so when is this occurring, and how do we ensure that their buy-in? That whole piece is kind of...
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
They're required to be trained anyway, and so we would just come in as part of that. I have worked with ESD, as Manya has, with the parenting, with the how to raise an adult, et cetera, on how to teach kids to be responsible and own when they make a mistake and not be, you know, just learn from it. And so I have worked with them for 2 years on some of the stuff they're already doing in ESD, so we can just do the same thing with the bus drivers and cafeteria staff.
And we've had to get them bus driver CPI training before. Our special ed department provides training for our bus drivers. It'll be a matter of working with Mr. Turner and the bus company on arranging times to be able to train them in addition to the other
And
things.
is this just once yearly that we do this training, or is this, as they're onboarded, we're providing it?
ESD trains multiple times throughout the year. I would have to check with the bus drivers. I don't know that answer.
We'll let him find out. That piece, I just would love for that to be reemphasized, and just as we're, you know, teaching our children repeatedly throughout the year, I would like that piece to, it's always a good reminder that people never forget the way you made them feel. And so I think that everything we can do to incorporate that across the board is important. Were the PTAs on board? Who worked with the PTAs on that?
We haven't reached out to them yet. That's part of the plan for this
That's part of the
upcoming
plan. Okay. I would like to remind them that they are to have a healthy lifestyles chair on their boards. And so for them, a lot of them, because the resources weren't there to provide information to their membership, those chair positions kind of fell off of the PTAs. And so I think that knowing that there was a resource that they just could tap into at any given time is really one of those pieces, because that's one of those things that for a volunteer, how much is that going to add to my plate? And so knowing that that is something that they would have access to, I think would be a good reminder for those that it's a good involvement of your families and our students to have something like this. So, okay, perfect.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Is this something that we would also tell the shacks that we're doing, just to keep them in the loop with one more thing that we're adding to help mentally? I'm on shack, I'd be happy to do that. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And then I had the accountability projects. I would love to see some of those, and the buy-ins and parent resources. And I think everybody else covered mine. Ms. Prosnick, and we appreciate Ms. Prosnick and Ms. Hassett coming. Ms. Prosnick was serving on federal jury duty selection today, so I just want to say thank you for your service. She was number 14. Anyway, do you have any questions, or would you like to?
I'll email my.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to give you the opportunity if you had. Okay, any more questions or any more thoughts? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all so much. I can't tell y'all how much we appreciate that.
Thank you all so much for being here.
Kit? Are we good on the kit? Can you just open it and show it? This is just what you were referring to as the pencil and paper, correct? Okay, perfect. Do you see? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, Dr. Rapp, moving on with you.
Okay, yes. So this instructional materials allotment funding item is really a collaborative effort between Mr. Colbeck, myself, and Mr. Ball. It is, as I wrote the item, unfortunate when a legislative session comes in at the same time as a language arts adoption from a timing perspective. I know that we wrote for you all that in anticipation of the language arts adoption, we did conservatively carry over from the 2017-19 biennium funds $6 million in anticipation of what might be needed. Unfortunately, the cost of those materials and some recurring needs are putting us at $1.4 million short. And so what we wanted to share this evening is that we do have the option with IMA funds to be able to get reimbursed once we get the allotment from the state. And so I was going to let Mr. Ball share about some important details regarding that reimbursement idea.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rapp, Ms. Sells, members of the board. This is really a timing issue. We are presenting on the regular monthly meeting next Monday night an action item where we're recommending to the board that the board actually authorize us to make this expenditure, and incorporated with that would be a budget amendment so that if the reimbursement doesn't arrive until September, that we would not have a compliance issue on our budget. And so we do believe that this will be fully reimbursed once the instructional materials allotment is released through the EMAT system. And this really is a timing issue, a compliance issue, all done in the interest of getting the instructional materials in the hands of the students as soon as school starts, or as soon as we can possibly get them here. And so that's really what this is about. It's really a timing issue.
Okay, let's start with questions, and let's go to Ms. Timish.
All right, thank you so much. Well, and I noticed in your notes it said may consider this strategy in the future, and I would like to continue that strategy of just assuming this is going to continue to be a timing issue, and so making sure that we do hold some back so that we have money for that. One of the questions I had was they gave us about $500,000 less this biennium than the previous biennium. Is there any way, I mean, just not to be negative, but how much less are we thinking they might give us this time?
I don't know that we'll know that until they release those funds later in the summer. But I mean, we know what the total appropriation is statewide. I say we know that. We can find that. It's in the budget bill. but how it gets divided up so that we know exactly what our slice of that pie is. I don't know that number. I don't know if Dr. Rapp or Mr. Colbeck does.
I did watch advocate or a legislative update today through TCA, and they had the projection to be an average of $3 less per student in this budget. So how that actually impacts us, that's just a rough number, but the estimate would be $3 less per enrolled student.
And that would be roughly $150,000.
So we're not thinking millions, but still $500,000 was a significant drop from the previous. So I'm just trying to make sure that we manage our resources in a way, knowing that we seem to be getting less when things cost more. So, all right. The main thing for me was just continuing the strategy moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller.
I don't think I have any questions.
Ms. Lasan?
No questions.
Ms. Prosnick?
Mr. Ball, do we anticipate, I know we have received these funds typically in late July, but do we anticipate receiving these funds before the end of our fiscal year?
I don't know that we know that, Ms. Prosnick, and I think that's the reason we're recommending that the board approve a budget amendment, simply because if we don't get the reimbursement, it would likely put us in a situation where we've overspent the budget. But our hope would be that we can enter our orders, get them here, get the documentation together needed to request the reimbursement, actually get the reimbursement before the end of the fiscal year. But some of that process will be out of our control. In fact, a good bit of that process will be out of our control. And so the other thing is we don't have a lot of precedent on which to base a conclusion about that, because although we have thought we would need to do this in the past, I don't know that we've actually done it. I have done it in another district, but it's been several years ago, and I don't know that you can base a conclusion now on what happened several years ago. So that's a long-winded I don't know. It would have been better to just say that and be quiet, I guess.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Ms. Prosnick? Or is that okay? Thank you, Ms. Hassett.
Really, this is also mainly because ELAR is such a large adoption. We wouldn't necessarily have the same for other smaller adoptions in years to come.
It's the years when you have the large adoptions that you would run into this situation typically, and you sometimes have this situation in a year where there are a couple of special sessions where maybe the budget bill doesn't get worked out until a special session.
Language arts and math are always your largest adoptions because the amount of English and Spanish that you're buying. And then, of course, any other adoption cycle will be impacted by how many contents they choose to put in one. One year we had that time where they coupled science and social studies and some languages other than English, and so that impacts it as well.
That's all.
I'll tell you. And I don't have all my questions were answered, but thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you. Okay. Ms. Cox, sorry.
She always forgets.
I do.
Yeah.
This
It's
whole
okay.
new
Actually,
arrangement
my question was answered by Ms. Timish, so thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Cox, for bringing that to my attention. Okay, so moving forward, Employee Services Report with Dr. Bonner.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Sells. Board members, Dr. Rapp, we have a quick item this evening on a proposed change to Board Policy DEC Local as it relates to our hardship leave policy. I've got a few slides that we'll put through and be happy to answer any questions or clarify any information. So Board Policy DEC Local addresses several types of leaves, and there's just a sampling of what those are on the slides. Local personal, hardship leave that I mentioned a moment ago, sick leave bank, temporary disability leave, and court appearance leave, subpoena leave, jury duty, that sort of thing. The current hardship leave policy is simply it's a maximum of 20 hardship leave dates. It's for the purposes of the employee's own illness or injury, including pregnancy-related illness or injury. There's also a maximum of 5 hardship days for bereavement. Excuse me. And then for each leave day taken under the hardship guidelines, the rate of a substitute is deducted from the employee's salary. I'll show you a slide in a little bit on the increasing cost to this. We're bringing this tonight for a review because of these items. We have, in Lewisville, we've typically provided more leave than is provided by our neighbors. For the purposes of this evening's presentation, we looked at 5 surrounding large school districts, 2 of whom provide no hardship leave, 2 of whom provide 10 days, and 1 of whom actually provides more, 30 days. Okay. In reviewing this over the last really couple of months, one of the things we did was have Mr. Crownover do some research, and there is no legal reason, or obligation is probably a better reason, a better term, no legal obligation to provide this leave. The increased usage of the leave, of course, has resulted in a loss of productivity and absences and increasing district cost. And so that's why we're bringing this evening for review. So what we have talked about administratively and had TASB review, if that's me or not, are the following changes. Require 90 days of employment before anyone can access hardship leave. There must be an exhaustion of all paid leave available to the employees in order to access hardship. There's currently not that caveat in the policy. Provide a maximum of 10 hardship leave days in alignment with a couple of districts, as I mentioned previously. This next bullet is actually expanded. TASB expanded that to the employee's own illness or injury, including pregnancy-related illness or injury. That's what it is now. But they expanded it for absences related to the adoption or placement of a child during foster care, or absences related to the employee's parent, spouse, or child. And so that's an expansion from current policy. Provides that if both parents are employed by the district on placement or adoption of a child, it's a 10 combined days, not 10 and 10. And then finally, excuse me, it increases the employee cost to 50% of the daily rate rather than the sub rate. Here's a brief chart on the last 3 years of history, last 3 complete years of history. You can see across the lines, the top line, the employee number 431 in 17-18 consumed 3,965 and a half days. And the cost to the district, and again, that's the cost of salary less the average sub rate, was $669,380. That was, if we revised it to the proposed policy with a cap of 10 days, it would have reduced the days available in hardship to 1,070. It would have also reduced the district's exposure on cost to $335,977. And you can see the delta there is just over $333,000 by the change it's proposed. Excuse me, last couple of slides, when we were discussing this administratively, there are a couple of items that are available to staff. They both have some caveats to them, but could bridge the gap if an employee chose to do so. One would be employee disability policies, but as I said, there are a couple of caveats to that. One, our disability policy, of course, has exception periods of varying lengths. And then 2, of course, that would be limited by pre-existing conditions. And then the Benefits Department is introducing a new policy this year for employees. It's the hospital indemnity policy. That does provide some opportunity to bridge the gap. However, you would have to be able to forecast, right, a need for hospital coverage. And so it's a little different, but it does provide some coverage that would make up for any change to hardship leave. And lastly, I'd be happy to answer any questions or run any information down if you'd like.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Miller, I'll start with you.
Thank you for looking into this. Is there a definition of illness versus sick days? So for example, if I have the flu for 3 to 5 days, does that go against this bank?
There is no definition with with regard to illness via sick, the state in the past has provided state sick leave. They did away with that years ago and provide state personal, and the district provides local personal leave. It's at such time that that is exhausted that an employee currently would make application to hardship leave.
Okay, so it's the same concept of businesses moving away from vacation and sick days to PTO.
I would characterize it that way, yes,
Okay.
sir.
So so when it says here local personal leave, hardship, this is all in the same bank.
I'm sorry, say that one more time, Mr. Miller.
On the second slide, oh, you're just addressing the employee leave programs that cover these areas. Local
No, sir,
person-
on that second slide, those are just the employee leave programs addressed in policy DEC local.
Okay. And will employees still be able to contribute to the leave of others that have a longer-term illness or?
Nothing else is being proposed for change other than
Okay.
the hardship leave policy.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Lasan?
I'm guessing that this is being brought up at this point as part of kind of some budget cuts that we're trying to make, I'm guessing.
Certainly a reduction in cost was one of the attractors, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I guess so this is not, hardship leave is not maternity. Like if you have a baby, this is not hardship leave, right? Like if you were put in bed rest, maybe that would be, because that's a pregnancy illness maybe.
Yes, ma'am. As noted in the policy currently and proposed, it does address pregnancy-related illness or injury.
Okay, but it's not, hardship is not considered like that. People don't take hardship when they have a baby and they're out for.
That's not correct.
Okay. Okay. I guess that's it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Prosnick?
Yes, on your hardship leave, the 3-year cost analysis, did you look at those employees to see if they had exhausted their vacation or sick days that are listed?
The policy as currently written did not require that.
Right. So, but do we know? I mean, or is that just
I'll have to
deep?
run that down, but it did not require it.
Because I would be curious of those 431 employees who used it, if they were leaving vacation or sick leave on the table, or did those 431 actually have exhausted that already? That would be interesting information.
Certainly.
I will say of the amendments, I do definitely agree with the 90 days of employment before accessing these benefits. I think that's a pretty standard across industries. I realize this would be a cost savings, but I also know that we value our employees in the district, and maybe providing benefits are some of the things that can make us more attractive than surrounding districts. So, I understand the need for cost reductions, but I don't know where I fall on that quite yet. I'm more curious to see if these current employees have exhausted all.
Sure, we'll run that down.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Ms. President. Ms. Hassett?
I concur. Mrs. President, I'm struggling with this one a little bit. I always like saving money. And I do like a few of the proposed revisions, the 90-day and exhaustion of all paid leave. What I would be interested in is what you had mentioned was in addition to knowing that, I know we've discussed this in the past with the surrounding districts, or the one you have discussed earlier, what their sick leave policies are. Because these also work in conjunction with each other. So if we're going to shorten our hardship days, but they already have more, I'd be very interested to know the delta between those before I would be willing to make a decision.
Sure.
So that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Hassett. Ms. Cox?
I'm more of a question of when they take the hardship, they take their leave first and then the hardship can kick in after that? Or do we have situations where they didn't know it was a hardship and became a hardship? Is that a possibility too, or?
Excuse me. The current policy does not require for vacation days. Of course, not all employees receive that, but once an employee had exhausted their state personal or local personal, then hardship would be available to them, along with sick leave bank if they remember that sort of thing.
On top of that?
After that, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, so consequently, they could take that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Timish?
All right, thank you. Yes, and I really like the requiring the 90 days and using all available first. The only one that I'm really struggling with is, do we know how many on the numbers for 2017 and 18 were spouses that they both used their hardship days?
I'll have to find out. I don't know.
Because for me, I feel like we're penalizing folks that both work in LISD, because if you've got a married couple and there's a hardship, for example, if there's a sickness in a child, they would have previously gotten 40 days. Now that couple only gets 10, and that's a pretty significant reduction. Correct? Because you could take 20 each, so now we're going from 40 down to 10. And so I think for me, the only piece that I would want to just see the numbers on is if, I'm not sure why we're penalizing married couples.
Okay, clarification, or maybe I misunderstand the statement or question. Current policy has no discussion on combination of days.
Okay, so then maybe, so I misunderstood. So
the proposed policy does limit it to 10 days for the adoption or placement of a child.
Right. For total for a family.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Whereas the current one does not.
So the hardship, okay, because when I'm looking at on page 12, when it says, so a total of 10 may be taken for the family. So that would, or adoption or placement would be a total. So that's the only time that a family unit would go from a hardship of potentially 40 days to just 10 days. Is that what you're saying? To make sure I'm understanding this correctly?
So they could take hardship, so a couple could take a hardship like for a sick child, but not adoption of a child.
Under the proposed policy, the restriction of days to 10 is specific in the item to the adoption or placement of
and
a child.
that's it. Okay.
Okay,
Correct.
perfect.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much. Then that clarifies my question.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Timish. And I fall where Ms. Hassett did on, would like to know more, an overview of all of the leaves that are available and which districts those are for. And so if we could get that information.
Sure.
The other question I had is, could we also know the cost of those alternative policies?
Certainly.
And that, I think, would clear up some information for me. I don't want to if they know that something's coming, or you don't ever know what's going to happen. I mean, I've been in that situation. You don't know when you're going to need hospital or disability time. And so if they're buying these policies, I would love, or these policies are going to be available to them, I'd love to know those costs to them. So
certainly.
And I think that's it. Does anybody else have any comments or questions additional? No? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bonner.
Thank you.
And moving on to schools and student activities report, Dr. Coburn.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Sells. Members of the board. My knee hurts now, just a little. As Leanne Lewis and Amanda Drinkwater are making their way up as well, this really was an opportunity to bring this to you tonight. It began with conversations with us about how to really review and evaluate the level of efficiency and resource stewardship that we have with our elective offerings in middle school. It's been a bit of a journey that Leanne's going to kind of give you some history on here as we go through this. But it turned into really more of an opportunity to really bring this to you in a larger context. Where are we with what's happening with middle school electives? What has that journey been? What does the future look like? And what are the decision points that we are looking at continuously to make sure that our middle school programs are robust and highly effective competitive where need be when that is part of the arrangement as well, and also providing that 6 through 12 verticality so that our high schools are able to be successful. So that's what we're hoping to really give you tonight. Did want to start with a little bit of a primer on this, just to help you guys understand what has been guiding some of our thinking. That first quote, organizing instruction for middle school students means attending to student differences purposefully and consistently by differentiating content, process, and product based on learners' varying levels of readiness, interests, and learning profiles. That comes from what is kind of the seminal text as we moved from junior highs into middle schools, and what a middle-level learner was all about in Turning Points 2000, and that idea of trying to figure out how to capture that adolescent learner, that middle-level learner's heart and mind kind of at the same time. Ken Robinson, who's one of the great thought leaders in our world, talks about creative thinking, which certainly we think gets fed through electives at the middle school level, and students having some choice and unlocking some of those creative pathways as their little brains are still developing at that adolescent stage. And something we're going to talk about a little bit later, the scarcity and abundance loop. It's this concept that as you have more of something, you sometimes have less of something at the same time as a result. That actually comes from a book that we studied when I first came here called A Beautiful Constraint. But it's a really great way to look at some things, and it's a way that we've kind of looked at a lot of this. So again, kind of what you're going to see here, we're going to take you through the journey a little bit, help you understand what's happening with elective staffing, specifically with the efficiency team, some things that you've heard a little bit already. We wanted to walk you through what some elective pathways look like, how students have choice in their electives at the middle school level. We wanted to talk about enrollment at the middle school level in the electives, some of the challenges there. And then we wanted to get very specific to one of the programs we had talked about at the very beginning that led us to this point, which is where we are with middle school orchestra and some considerations for the future there.
So whenever I first came in, when we transitioned away from zones to more horizontal alignment, and I was working with all the middle school campuses, we really started talking about looking at programs and offerings at campuses to try to get some consistency, because it varied so much, and it was a concern when students were transferring from one campus to another. So the summer of 2017, all the middle school campuses got together, principals, and really we put a Google Doc together and looked at the middle school offerings of electives and how that varied across all the campuses. Some of the things that were highlighted and really came forth with that, one of them was study skills and what study skills look like at the different campuses, whether it was just a study hall. Some campuses were using actual curriculum for the study skills, and it just looked a lot different kind of everywhere we went. So we really wanted to hone in on that study skills piece. Also, one of the big things the principals had concerns about was the tech applications classes and just the tech education as far as no curriculum being provided. So when you have teachers when you have one teacher with one certification and one with another certification that fits that role, their strengths that they all have, so they kind of choose classes that really fit to their strengths. And so robotics, one teacher might focus on a certain aspect of robotics that another teacher is not, and so or they might want to teach photography here, and so it was just kind of varied across. So we really wanted to try to select some areas where we could get some consistency in curriculum and have our district provide that curriculum by getting teachers together. So that was a really important piece for principals. We also made it really talked about, which was pretty consistent at the time, that sixth grade, all sixth grade students when they came in were required to take a fine arts elective, because what we found at different times is if they missed it in sixth grade, I was part of a couple of situations to where we get to eighth grade, it's already eighth grade, and we're already into eighth grade, and we don't have our fine arts, and so we're scrambling. And so we made it consistent across all middle schools that when they came in at sixth grade, every sixth grade student was going to be in a fine arts at that point. And then the Discovery offerings, I don't know if you know what Discovery looked like, but Discovery where you got a little bit of a piece of different arts throughout, and might include tech ed too, just varied on campuses. And so we really pulled back on that discovery because it had really kind of dwindled at a lot of the campuses, and we had so many robust electives already, so that we kind of pulled that one out of the mix. The following year, starting that next fall, we got with Adrian and Marino and Karen Seeley and Ann Crosby and looked at the CTE pieces and those concerns that the principals were sharing as far as that curriculum, and really developed a plan of what we were going to do moving forward, and getting together back with the principals to determine what those elective pieces, or what electives we were going to look at, focusing on curriculum first, because it takes time and a lot of work to do that. And so we came together a little bit later, and we narrowed it down to select 3 courses that we have been working on this year, that all teachers across all middle schools came together and wrote the curriculum. It was a really great process with Ann Crosby and the curriculum team to develop the curriculum for those 3 courses listed there, which is robotics, gaming, and animation, and tech apps too. Last year we piloted Tech Apps 1 at Lamar Middle School, and that is an expectation in regards to the tech classes that we're required to take that class before moving on, because we kind of talked a lot about things that were missing when they jumped that course, just basics really. So that's what we looked at for the 18-19 was that curriculum writing piece. And then next, the efficiency team and middle school electives. We also talked about athletics and those set parameters of what every campus would have in regards to athletics and fine arts. And so you have the 8 coaches at every middle school campus, and we wanted to make sure that that was consistent across all. We've also looked at PE certified only coaches. That has become an issue with scheduling and being able to, as we looked at that efficiency, we had too many PE only certified coaches. And so we actually have principals that are on PE plans. That's what I called it. So when they lose a PE coach, they have to contact me, and most likely they're not going to get to rehire. They'll have to choose a content area in order to really meet the needs of the campus. So that is the athletics. As far as fine arts, that minimum staffing. So every campus has a theater teacher, a choir teacher, currently an orchestra teacher, 2 band directors. Did I name all of them? And theater, yes. And theater, so that was just the minimum staffing model that every campus would have. And then as far as CTE, all other electives, it really depends on the course offerings and what students are selecting. So the principal has that autonomy to determine what programs are at their campus based on student selection and what is growing at their campus.
So through the process with the efficiency team, we took a look at every single fine arts program that we were offering. As Ms. Lewis mentioned, we took a look at each of the disciplines, not just from a snapshot of their enrollment data, but from trend data over several years. And we established what we thought were a set of staffing criteria that really represented what we thought it took to establish and sustain a robust program in each of these areas. And so we do have schools that are not at these established standards. We're going to talk, but we did look through this at all levels. Tonight we're focusing on the middle schools, but as represented there, just a little bit about what we discussed and where we landed on all of this. Art was discussed as a single teacher, full-time teacher, band, two specialist component there with brass and woodwinds. Choir at a full-time teacher. Orchestra is what we're talking about a little bit more today, establishing that as a full-time teacher, and theater as a full-time teacher as well.
Just looking at middle school, there's core academic programs that all students are required to take, and that is your English, math. English is double blocked.
Math, science, and social studies are, for the majority of campus, 45-minute blocks, depending on what they currently have in their schedule. It might be a 3-2 type situation. For a sixth grade student, elective choices, all sixth grade students are required to have PE. They also are required to have the fine arts elective, which is year-long. That is as well as the entry point for a band and orchestra, so it is important. We do have some special circumstances to where we might allow for a student in 7th grade to begin those programs, but it is very difficult just because of just coming in late and just class sizes and getting scheduling and all of that. And so there are special circumstances, but it's very rare in regards to that. Choice electives, they do have that choice. So we have the PE, the fine arts, and one other choice elective they have at 6th grade. For 7th and 8th grade, the PE or athletics, they do have to meet those requirements. Fine arts or a choice elective, and then another choice elective. So we have some varying there of what those look like for 7th and 8th grade. The next piece, if you would turn to the schedule document that looks like this, that's on the back page. And this is just middle school sample elective offerings, and you can look, it goes from left to right across the top. You have your 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, so you can see a 3-year span of time and what a student in a traditional model, which would be in 6th grade PE, a full-time fine art, and then one elective, transition into that 7th grade. Where I really want you to look as, because we have students who are going to have different scenarios and situations depending on, are they at a STEM campus, which will be something we're looking at moving forward, and what that would look like for a 6th grade student. Also, the intervention model is a student who may need double block math because they have a lot of weaknesses in math, or a reading elective. And so you can see when students are put into those programs, that is limiting their elective choice. Where it gets really something that's really important that we look at too is our model dual language programs. So when students come in, they're kind of locked in at 6th grade. They have to maintain that dual language enrollment there in 6th grade, so they have dual language, a fine arts, and then their PE elective. And then as it just transitions up, you can see, depending on what model they're in, how much choice they have in those pieces. But I think it's really good just to see the variety and how that looks depending on programs kids are in.
Yeah. And if we can go back to the slides, thanks for putting that up. That next graphic, just to kind of go back to what we talked about at the very beginning, as you have an abundance of offerings and opportunities for kiddos, you can start to run into some scarcity in other places. How do you have, when you only have X number of kids at a school and you have Y number of elective opportunities, how many of those can maintain a level that we can run with any sort of efficiency and eye toward resource stewardship? And so it's about maximizing those opportunities for kids. And you'll recall that first quote from Jackson and Davis from Turning Points 2000. It's about really unlocking what they want. And so we want to come back again to this whole idea being maximizing opportunities for middle school kids to have some choice, and also maximizing how long we can delay those decisions that they have to make. Ultimately, our students, certainly at the high school level, you got to kind of pick a path and start to go, and it really impacts what the rest of your PK through 12 experience looks like, and oftentimes a little bit what your PK through 16 experience looks like. And we want to do all we can to delay as many of those decisions as we can for our middle school students, regardless of what their situation is, what their interest is, what their program is, and certainly what their campus is. So we do want to look a little bit at some enrollment figures. You can see we had not quite 12,000 students in our middle schools as of last year's snapshot date. And if you do the math on those fine arts programs, we got about as many kids in fine arts programs as we have kids in middle school. And certainly, all of them have to take a full year of fine art. I mean, I want to be fully transparent about this. It is a requirement. 1/3 of your middle school experience is in a fine art by state requirement. But also, we have students that are in multiple fine arts. That certainly does exist at our middle schools. It is possible. It's difficult, but not impossible for students to do that. And also, we have 60% of our 7th and 8th grade students, 4,839 students that participate in athletics at the middle school level. And that's an important number because those students are choosing athletics. You don't necessarily choose PE because it is required, but you're choosing to make a commitment. You're saying, I have an interest in this to a level that I want to do some outside of school things. I want to commit my time and my energy. And we've got 60% of our 7th and 8th graders that do that. And so that challenge really does become maximizing those opportunities while maintaining the enrollment necessary for those programs to succeed.
So we also took a look at the trend and a snapshot really from what ended up being 11 years ago, 2009, relative to 2019. And the good news was that we had an overall increase in fine arts engagement at the middle school level. However, not all programs reflected that increase. Band and choir, which are kind of our traditional programs in the district, had decreased enrollment relative to that time frame. And then newer or expanded programs, including art, orchestra, and theater, had increases in enrollment. And it's worth mentioning that in 2009, we had maybe 11 out of 15 middle schools that had theater at all in those programs, or 11 or 10 or 11 middle schools that had orchestras. So we added programs at those campuses, which does reflect some of that increase over time. The high school snapshot is reflective of what we just discussed. The overall engagement has remained about steady. Dance enrollment, which we add at the high school level, has remained steady, and the other disciplines are reflective of what we're showing in middle schools, which is decrease in band and orchestra, or band and choir rather, and then some increase in theater. Some of the impacting factors, of course, we've increased elective offerings at all of the grade levels. We've discussed that just a little bit. Of course, the high school credit opportunities, as they began to proliferate, those have been impactful to retention into 8th, 9th grade. And the art and theater programs, they tend to reflect programs through which students pass for that fine arts credit. So students who are generally, fine arts is not for everyone. It's not something that all the kids want to stay in through the 12th grade, certainly. Art and theater tend to represent the programs that the kids bounce through for that single year elective and move on. So as that has increased, we've seen that bouncing trend through those programs as well. So we just really wanted to take a look at a means of supporting and striking a balance between all of these offerings and continuing to support all of these disciplines and provide opportunities that remain quality experiences for these students wherever we do have these programs, especially when some campuses are undergoing steady enrollment trends overall or declining enrollment trends over time. So revisiting that topic with middle school orchestra, we had a conversation about capacity, including enrollment, space, facilities, the campus data, both present and future data regarding enrollment, the programs, the availability of staff, and the challenges of sustaining 5 independent fine arts programs at every single middle school, particularly at some of our smaller schools, which has become a challenge. And it's worth mentioning that many of our smaller programs, smaller orchestra programs, are still sustaining a 0.5 teacher. We still have 4 campuses with 0.5 teachers and even more campuses with split teachers that are basically serving a half day at one campus due to the enrollment and then visiting another campus for the other half of the day. that has been difficult, even just speaking from the last 16 months, seeing the turnover, our ability to attract and retain outstanding orchestra directors with the draw of either a half-time position or a position that requires them to be in two places every single day has been a challenge. And so we began to take a look at where there may be opportunities by virtue of regions within the district that seem to have these enrollment, reflective enrollment pictures near one another, and thought about a consolidation plan in 3 places to consider grouping students, having them opt to attend a school at which Orchestra was present, and creating a 3-year plan to move towards that, similar to what we may be doing with dual language programs, offering that choice to everyone, but then defining places that it could be offered to bolster the quality of the program, the ability to attract and retain outstanding teachers, with a goal of serving all interested students, and at the end of that time period, essentially offering orchestra at 12 of our 15 middle schools with a 1.0 teacher and with more robust and representative enrollment for their program endeavors.
And I do want to touch on one more point on this. That 0.5 teacher, I know Leanne and I've talked about this and lived this in our former lives as middle school principals. When you're trying to build a schedule and you're trying to have, grade level planning time or PLC-like planning time, by core content area, and you're setting all of these parameters, there is no albatross like a halftime teacher on your campus to try to meet some of those needs. And I tell you that it really is it's really hard. But it speaks to so many of those ancillary things that seem really far away from the orchestra program. But boy, your halftime teacher, whether it's a halftime Spanish teacher, a halftime orchestra teacher, a halftime whatever, has a gigantic impact on some of the other things that you want to do when you're figuring out the best way for students and teachers to navigate their way through their day. So looking at what a consolidation timeline would look like, and again, we've had these conversations with our middle school principals. I want to publicly commend Leanne for her leadership of the middle school principal group. When you can get 15 middle school principals in a room together and you can talk about some of these challenges and you can see every single head say, yeah, we see a need, we understand the need to take a look at some of these things. It's really powerful. I think it speaks to the fact that all of our folks understand that they want to do what's best for our entire district as well as for their schools. Certainly in a plan like this, we would begin early in the 2019-20 school year communicating some of the why behind these considerations. We would have to let schools know who they were, because we would need to do that before we had any choice sheets that get out there, because choice sheets would have to be reflective of what the future would hold for some of our campuses. And as you think about things like fall transfer windows and making sure that there would just be a wealth of information for people to consider about understanding where a program of interest may be offered. And again, I think it's important to point out, we've looked at enrollment patterns, how long programs have existed, how robust the program is, whether we've got a 0.5 or full-time teacher at those schools. As we have taken a look and just said, okay, where would be some of the places that we would want to take a look at this? And so that's what would happen in year one. And so the only people that would be affected would be people that are not yet in middle school. And so there'd be a lot of time for people to be able to make decisions and families to understand what would be happening. In year two, you would be doing a gradual drawdown. You can think at that point you're only offering orchestra to students in 7th and 8th grade at those schools. We would still have those teachers that would be there as we transition. The idea here being, we don't want to take anybody who is currently at a middle school anywhere and tell them, you now have a choice. You can either stay in orchestra or stay at your school, but you can't do both. And we have a plan. We can implement a timeline like this that would eliminate that decision point from happening for any family. Any decision points would be happening with families that are not yet in middle school. So what we would be able to do is be able to still take care of our 7th and 8th grade students in year two, thinking of the fact that 7th and 8th is your performing groups. And at most of our orchestra programs, there's only one performing group in the 7th and 8th grade. They just vary in size based on how our enrollment is. We have a couple that have 2, and I would think that those schools, we could probably see those 2 performing groups in 7th and 8th grade consolidate down to 1. And then in year 3, we would be down to only a single section at our phase-out schools for our 8th grade students, and we would have multiple considerations, I think, for what we would want to do for 8th grade students. They would have had a lot of time at that point to consider what their options would be. Would they want to get in and get involved more with a program that's now probably larger, or would they want to stay at their school? And we would be able to accommodate those students, but we would have the ability to maintain orchestra at all of our schools long enough for our current 6th graders to be able to matriculate through. And when I say current 6th graders, I mean our rising 6th graders. 6th graders as of, when they walk into school on August 13th, they're going to be in 6th grade. Those kiddos would be able to matriculate all the way through their middle school without ever having to make a decision about, do I choose my school or do I choose orchestra?
Questions time? And let's start with Ms. Lasan.
Well, first of all, I guess I almost feel like any question I ask, I have the right to ask, obviously, as a board member, but I know that y'all have put many, many hours and lots of thought, and I know that I've had conversations with you, Dr. Coburn, about all this and geeking out on, stuff, schedules and things, but I guess the one thing out of all of this, and I totally understand it, and it actually kind of explains some things too, like I know at our middle school, they're kind of reducing art for next year, and so this explains a lot with that. I guess the one thing that overall just kind of bothers me is, thank you, dear, is, and I don't know, I do know why, but I kind of understand it, but that 6th grade is the only year that you can decide, and I understand what you're saying, they got to make a decision at some point, that you want to be in band or orchestra. I just kind of hate that because, and maybe it's just, maybe I'm going for my own kid who just, will all of a sudden decide, hey, I think I want to try this, but I just sort of hate that, because it's like you're deciding in 6th grade whether or not you're going to be in the marching band at one of the high schools, and so, because, let's face it, that's when you have to get in it and decide that, if that's what you want to do. So, I don't know that that's really a question, it's just more of a statement, but...
You want me to answer your non-question?
Yes, please, thank you.
I think I can try to, because I do know we've talked about this in the past, and I know it bothers Mrs. Drinkwater and Mrs. Lewis and me as well, and they're nodding affirmingly, so that's good. I'm glad to know we're all on the same page there. So one of the things that we've really worked on, and Ms. Drinkwater's really led, is in our recruiting effort when we go down to the middle schools, when it becomes time for those students to make those decisions. And all these things tie together. Minimum value staffing. So as a middle school principal, I'm trying to maximize the units that I have, and it tends to lead me toward one art teacher, which probably means that I've got some 6th graders that may say art is where I wanted to go, but I don't have the space. And so there's an opportunity there as we do this recruiting in kind of a fine arts holistic way at 6th grade to say, listen, if you had any doubt about band, choir, orchestra, I'm not sure if I wanted to do that or not, now's the time to go ahead and give it a shot. If you go in 6th grade and you don't like it, you've got all this time to go try something else, to get into the theater realm. We've talked about our choir teachers in the 6th grade really helping to emphasize some of the musical theater aspects of theater arts. We've done such a great job building these theater arts programs. And so why wouldn't our choirs in middle school be helping with some of, our theater kids are better off if they can read music and sight sing. And so they all kind of work together. So I think what we're seeing now is a more concerted effort across our fine arts disciplines to help tell that story to a 5th grader. Because we do have a reality, I may be getting in on somebody's question here, I'm sorry if I am, that in our staffing model, our art offering in 6th grade is more limited than the number of students that tend to want to take art in the 6th grade. But again, from a resource stewardship standpoint, we do offer art in 6th grade. It's usually just on a fairly limited basis.
Okay.
Can I speak to that as
please.
The single grade entry point for instrumental music is widespread across the state.
Okay.
I think that's a pretty reflective. It's sixth grade in most places. You find the occasional fifth grade, the occasional seventh grade, but the sixth grade instrumental music on board is sort of the central piece of instrumental music on board. And so we do have seventh graders that are afforded the opportunity if they really want to do that. We do have examples every year. It's a handful, but if they're interested and they're walking through the doors, they're not turned away. It is challenging to get the middle school campuses that have a certain schedule structure for sixth grade to welcome a seventh grader, and then the seventh grader onboarding in a group full of sixth graders.
Yes. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes, I get it. Okay, that's great. The only other thing, switching gears a little bit, outdoor trails was a popular elective for my son. But I see. So, is that a class that's offered across the board?
For the most part, at most middle schools, yes, and that's just considered an other elective. It's not listed there with a CTE load, but it would be an other for the most part. There are a few campuses who don't have it because that was wasn't a course selected by the students, so that may have been a cut that happened as a result of not being popular course. So that was an area that a campus principal chose to cut.
Okay. And so overall, I love, and I think we've all said this, that you're trying to make things the same across the board, for all the middle schools. I really like that. So thanks for your efforts.
And let me just add to that, they're not all identical. We're trying to keep consistency with really curriculum offerings and minimizing that just where we see more consistency. So when students go from campus to campus, makes that transition a little bit easier as well.
Good job. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Prosnick?
Yes, so I have a couple of clarifiers. It's my understanding that neither Downing or Forest would run the block schedule. Okay, so those two don't run that core academic schedule.
They have 8 periods.
Right.
So it's still going to be the same number as far as how, but it's not going to look like an 8-period. It's
block.
Right. It's not a block. So that's really not reflective in this information.
And then remind me, this was from another one of our work sessions, the athletic requirement in 8th grade is a local requirement, it's not a state requirement. That's correct.
That's PE.
But PE, not athletic, sorry, PE. If a student, are we concerned at all if we do the 3-year plan that we could decimate a program down to where that we have 2 orchestra students? I mean, what if that happens? I mean, because if I hear that it's going away, so why am I going to stick around?
Yeah, the possibility. We are prepared for that possibility. There's multiple different ways that we would be able to deal in such an eventuality. It may be busing kiddos over to, that's not unprecedented. We've done it with, a child that's taking geometry that hops on a bus. And if we end up in a one-off situation like that, we feel like we'll be prepared to handle that. Our enrollment doesn't suggest that we would see that. I think that we may end up, you may end up looking down the road at something that looks more like a chamber group than a symphony orchestra, but certainly would have enough students to be able to perform. And there's different learning that comes from that, and frankly, there's some opportunity in that too. We did talk about what happens if we end up with just a couple of kiddos left, and we feel like we'll be able to meet their needs if that happens. We'll just need to get creative.
When you looked at the programs, did you look at the cost to the student to see if that was a factor in the declining enrollment?
Yes, ma'am. The results are mixed, and they don't bear patterns reflective of socioeconomic trends of particular campuses. We did not feel that the data supported a connection directly to cost.
And fine arts has really, I know that our old friend Bill Watson took great pride in the work that happened in building the orchestra program at DeLay, which is one of our largest programs, but it is also the program for which it's safe to say we've given the most financial support in terms of instruments. I mean, orchestra is by design, it's expensive. String instruments are really expensive. And that's actually one of the considerations when you think about consolidating some of those programs is an upright bass is a pretty costly instrument, correct? Ms. Drinkwater, how much one of those things cost? A lot. More than my car, right?
You can get one for several $1,000s. You can get a great one for tens of thousands.
Yeah. So if 4 students are accessing that instrument instead of 1 or 2 students, we are being much better stewards of that money because it's a lot cheaper to string that thing twice as often than it is to buy twice as many.
And have we talked to the high school orchestra?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I visited with the 3 feeder patterns that may be impacted, and we had some of the same discussions that we're having now. I think we felt that it was a critical piece to keep that connection with the teacher. When you speak to the 7th and 8th grade and potential attrition, that I think is the biggest concern, that we maintain that connection, particularly through the teacher. But between the love of the instrument and the love of the teacher, we feel confident that the plan can escort those students successfully. We will be very intentional about drawing a pathway to their future opportunities at their high school program.
So if a student takes, I'm going to call it a fine arts transfer because I don't know what else to call it, and then they decide not to do it that last year, do they have to go back to their home
No,
campus?
The same transfer rules apply. So, and it would be the exact same transfer as what anybody else would do under our board policy.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brosnick. Ms. Hassett?
Can we see a list of the electives per campus so that we can understand what they're, and what could make, not what does make?
Yeah, I think maybe
You would
choice
look at-
sheets by.
Yeah, choice sheets by, but choice sheets are gonna vary by campus. It doesn't, but you're right, it doesn't mean it's gonna make, but what is offered, we can get choice sheets by all the campuses.
We've also got the middle school course guide, which is online now? It is online now, correct, right?
Yes.
This was the first year that Jill Adams did a ton of work getting the middle school course guide online, which would be reflective of what all the offerings are. And then we'll get you the choice sheets as well, so you can see how the district course guide and the campus offerings are. Sure.
High school credit for art in 8th grade, is that still?
Yes, it is offered at the majority of campuses, not all. Depends on the request and.
Is it offered at all? Or
Yes,
does
it
make
would
all?
be, it doesn't make at all. It is on the choice sheet. Yeah.
What happens if a student transfers in from outside the district and they don't have a fine arts credit? Then they are allowed to choose band at that point?
That would be an exception, really, of something that would be looked at depending on how much they wanted to really participate. But it would be a priority of a counselor to check that piece when they're coming in.
Here'd be a great example. HEB, right? It's HEB, correct? HEB now starts their band and orchestra in 7th grade. So if we have a student that moves here from HEB, we're not going to tell them no, for sure.
And they still need their credit, so we need to
Yeah,
get that.
absolutely. Again, the biggest challenge I think on that is the way that most middle schools tend to schedule. It becomes really difficult to put a 7th or 8th grader in what is ostensibly a 6th grade class. That's the challenge.
And I totally appreciate the challenge. I have a little angst.
We overcome that challenge when we need to.
I have an angst with telling, young conscience, you have to choose that. So I totally understand what Ms. Mazar was saying. Okay, I know I have a couple more. Bear with me. Which campuses are you thinking of changing, switching?
Yeah, I figured that question was probably coming at some point. Really, at this point, we're focused on feeder patterns, and then we're looking at some options within those feeder patterns. And so, the colony feeder pattern, with only 2 middle schools available, if you were to cut that in half into one, that we don't feel right now like that would be a real great thing to do for your community, to pigeonhole people into one opportunity. The numbers in terms of the what we can support when you think about half-time directors versus full-time directors are telling us right now that we believe we can support 3 middle schools in the Flyer Mountain feeder pattern. So we're looking at the Flyer Mountain High School feeder pattern. So we're looking at the Lewisville feeder pattern, which has 4 middle schools, and it's going to have a really beautiful facility at Hedrick Middle School coming online, which I would certainly love to fill with orchestra students. And then Marcus, where we have some of our newest programs, frankly, are in the Marcus feeder pattern. And then the Hebron feeder pattern, where we've got 2 schools that have really small orchestra programs right now that are sharing a halftime teacher. And so we're just kind of looking at all that, and then the facilities, the future growth in the schools, and just what would make the most sense. And we've talked with all of those principals that kind of know, this is what we're looking at, but we have not, really it's feeder patterns at this point.
I have a quick, since you mentioned it. In the bond package, we have an art expansion at Arbor Creek Middle School. That was part of the bond package. Are you going to take orchestra away at Arbor Creek?
So we've actually been looking at, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, no, I'm just saying, because the bond package says to expand that space, and so
And that's actually one thing. I just met recently with Randy Fight and Jason Hughes, and Amanda Drinkwater and I did, along with several other construction folks, about what some of those things would look like as you look at some of these in ed specs, and what is the most efficient use of resources to do those sorts of things. So he's way on top of it, way ahead of me on that. Yes, ma'am.
You have a plan for marketing current students? What happens long term with new parents coming in, and how will we make sure that we market to the new parents long term, that they have this opportunity? I just fear that we might miss some parents that don't have kids in the system right now.
Can you expand on it and make sure that
if we reduce those 3 campuses and they have the opportunity to transfer to another school, I want to make sure, because it'll be very easy to communicate now, but if someone has a young child, they might.
Gotcha.
And I want to make sure that if this is an offering, it's well broadcast to everybody.
Appreciate the feedback. Absolutely.
That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Hassett. Ms. Cox?
Okay, I have a couple of questions. So, a lot of them, I'm kind of with Ms. Lason about the programs. I love it that our kids get opportunities to do different types of activities in middle school. So, is the goal to eliminate orchestra? This kind of sounds like we're doing that.
The goal is to eliminate halftime. Really, the goal is to take a look at how we can make sure that enrollment keeps programs that are at schools robust. The idea being that a full, thriving, vibrant orchestra program at school B, where the student from school A may need to transfer to do that, is better than having a really small program that is not thriving at school A. And looking at just making sure that we can provide programs that are great, instead of having a middle school program that's just okay because we can't find a great halftime teacher to give our students the experience they deserve. And it's just the reality, I think, in some of these smaller schools of trying to have 5 fine arts programs at those schools. But we absolutely are 100% committed to having the 5 fine arts disciplines continue to thrive in our 6 through 12.
I'm all about the consolidation. I've always thought we have way too many choices. And for a child, you want to take them all. Middle school's the time when you play everything. You play every sport, you play every instrument, just do it all in middle school.
Yep.
So I'm curious, though, how that works for high school. So let's say we have a transfer student, and they have to follow the transfer rules, Dr. Coburn. So those high school people, they come over to those middle schools, and they recruit. So how does that work when now you can't get a transfer to that high school?
Well, it's by feeder pattern. So we would anticipate that the vast majority of those transfers would still be within their high school's feeder pattern. So
Okay, so they're staying in their feeder pattern.
I think that would happen for the most part, and that opportunity to stay in your feeder pattern would still exist for every student. And certainly our student services office would make folks keenly aware of the implications of that. And also, though, as you guys may recall, we had this conversation with you way back, I think last October. We really are trying to do everything we can to honor feeder pattern consistency and transfers anyway. We really believe in that. We hate the idea that we would tell a student yes at a middle school transfer and then turn around and tell them no at the high school. You guys have made that pretty clear to us that that's not the direction the board would like to go on that either. So it doesn't really jive with the student experience cornerstone. So we would want to honor that no matter what.
Okay. I just have a few more questions. Thank you for allowing me to ask. So what about capacity enrollments? My children have faced that before where they wanted in art, couldn't get in art, so they chose something else. So how is that going to work when orchestras are only, option? Like you only have option to pick classes in 6th grade, right? Aren't you limited to 6th grade making some decisions?
Well, yes, as that point of entry for band and orchestra, yes, that's a 6th grade point of entry as a general rule. In terms of if I try to take art in 6th grade,
I just use it as an example, but I'm saying, what if I try to go to an orchestra in your capacity? So now I can't get in, and what happens?
We got a lot of room for orchestra.
Yes, ma'am. And the beginner classes are divided by instrument, so it would be highly unlikely that we would have any 6th grade class in any instrumental program that would exceed the capacity of the large ensembles in the 6th grade. Yes, ma'am. And I think we've got a couple of programs that are engaged to capacity, but in general, we have lots of room for growth in the 7th and 8th grade as well.
Okay, because I wouldn't want to deny somebody an opportunity to do that because they were at capacity. Ms. Hassett already asked a question about the schools, and that was a question I had. And then, the cost was another question. I was curious about the cost of some of the programs, which you answered some of that, of the breakdown for the cost. So I think that's all for me now.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Ms. Timish?
All right, thank you for this presentation. I appreciate you looking at this. I did have a couple of questions. I think for me, just again reiterating that if we're combining, it sounds like we've got 6 programs that maybe are having half teachers, so we're going to condense it, consolidate it down to 3. But I just would like to make sure that those feeder patterns are clean. That if we're consolidating 2 campuses, it's 2 in the same feeder pattern, so that we're not trying to move around.
Yes.
Yeah. So that sounds. Yeah, perfect. And then the other one was, as you did the efficiency study, and maybe we've landed on it, and I just have slept and don't remember, but I know we had, Ms. Lewis, with like football, we had parents that were wanting to do athletics but didn't want their kids to enter into football as the primary sport. Have we worked that out with how the campuses are managing that now, and is it consistent across all the middle schools?
Yes, pretty consistent. There's been a lot of conversations with that, and it's tricky just because of supervision. When you have football and the amount of work that has to be done on the football field, they have made some. You might have a few more managers, you might have kids out there walking the track, but we do have some. The coaches have to be out there with all the football kids because of the magnitude of number. But there may be some conditioning training going over here with more of strength and conditioning with medicine balls and different things to where they're in close proximity to where a coach is near there. But all kids, we are not requiring every single kid to participate in football.
Okay, and that's consistent across all of our middle schools.
We are encouraging because there is a lot for the kids to learn being a part of that, even though they may not want the tackle piece of it and the injuries of that. But there is, as far as the strength and the conditioning and what they get out of that does carry over into other sports as well. So we really don't have a whole lot of kids because of some of those conversations our coaches and administrators are having with the parents. But I haven't heard any concerns from parents this past year that they weren't getting heard or weren't getting their request accomplished.
Thank you so much for doing that. And then just one other piece I do like that now you're over in a horizontal pattern across all of our middle schools. Is there anything else that you've, I appreciate this, is there anything else that you've seen that we've been able to work on or change differently as in your new role now that you've been at it a couple of years?
Well,
And you can email it. I just was curious because you're getting to see like.
There's a lot of work we're doing in curriculum and PLC work and just aligning those pieces and just really in-depth conversations with social emotional with kids. So there's a lot of things that we're really working together across. Really the only other thing I think we mentioned a little bit was the study skills earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, the need is not, parents or kids are not enrolling or requesting study skills anymore. So I think I have 2 campuses across the whole district that really have study skills, and they do have a curriculum that they're actually using. It's not a study hall anymore. That was an expectation that if they're going to have, one might be purchased. It's not the same curriculum. One was written by a campus. It's really good, solid curriculum, and another was purchased. But there's only 2 campuses that are utilizing study skills for, but it's still really a small group of kids. We don't see that request across campuses anymore.
Do you feel like it's maybe Avid is taking the place of that in parents' mind?
Probably in some of the campuses, yes, but there's so many rich opportunities for elective choices, and I think our teachers are working with our kids because I think our teachers' mindsets have shifted on the amount of homework in a lot of areas, so we're not seeing that overabundance, and so I think it's a combination of change in teaching strategies as well as just offerings available.
Thank you so much.
Can I brag on it, expand on that answer and brag on, again, on the middle schools a little bit? You know, they got the late time, right, on school start. Somebody was going to get that one. And Leanne has really worked with the middle schools on making sure that there's time being utilized in the morning, particularly because a lot of kids get dropped off early, and how do we make valuable use of that time? I think we've got more programs, enrichment opportunities, tutorials that are happening in the mornings at our middle schools than ever before. And so I'm hoping that maybe some of that is that we're getting some rich opportunities to help students grow academically through some of that time that they've got in the morning before that 8:55 school.
That 0 hour.
Yes.
Well, thank you. That's wonderful to hear. I appreciate that.
Okay, Mr. Miller?
I think a lot of my questions have been asked. I think good job invoking Sir Ken Robinson, by the way, Joe.
You'd like that.
The primary I remember us talking about this actually sitting on the graduation stage, so it's been about 3 years or so work, right? But the primary focus here has been PE and then fine arts electives in this presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been a discussion of other electives, though, that kind of a rationalization of should we eliminate some of those or expand them, be more consistent, et cetera?
Yeah, I think that's where what we've really tried to go, really 6 through 12, is to let student choice drive what's happening in a master schedule. In that courses can be offered, but if students aren't signing up for them, you can't have the course. And so you allow things like what is happening in the world, what students are increasingly interested in, and when you combine that with the work that the middle schools have done with learning and teaching on making sure that we've got really aligned curriculum for some of these programs, it has ceased the need to really ask, should we be offering this course anymore? Really the questions become, do we have a viable curriculum for it? Does this school have a teacher for it? Do we have students that want to take it? And if the answers to all 3 of those questions are yes, then we want to offer the course. Kind of back to Ken Robinson, because students would want it and they can unlock that creative mind. So.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, and I think it's in the presentation, and this was a discussion point a few years ago, in particular around markets where we were seeing a decreased enrollment in band at the high school level. And I again, I mean, I support this, right? This is not really a board action item, so it's a directional thing that we're going to move in. But I think about the article, I don't know if it was on the website or Mrs. Drinkwater, you were quoted in it, in talking about our band programs and, you know, Best in the Nation or something like that. And, I mean, Flarmont, I remember Flarmont was, you know, I know that's kind of, but you were quoted in it. I just think about, you know, what is it, the kind of broadening of some of these electives, right, which I think is important. And I think what you're doing is saying we may not offer all of these in each middle school, so transfer may be required. But I also think about what's going to happen with this dilution, right, in the future with some of these marquee programs at the high school level.
That's a great question. There is no doubt, and we had this conversation with our middle school principals. Choir and band, more so than theater, art, and orchestra, are really enrollment driven. It takes a lot of kids to have a marching band at the 6A level that can go out there and win a state championship. And it takes a lot of kids to have an honor choir at the 6A level. It takes a decent amount of kids for a great theater program, for a great orchestra program, and certainly art is a kind of an individual sport, you know. Yeah. So you do have a volume concern when it comes to band and choir, more so than the other three, and we're not seeing that at the broader scale at the high school level we're having this enrollment concern with orchestra. What we're seeing is the orchestras at the 5 high schools don't need to be supported by 15 middle schools in an efficient model. So we're always aware that band and choir require volume of kids. And I don't think that concern's going to go away. Okay. But we still want to continue to provide every STEM, language, you know, other fine art, athletic opportunity that we can, because we believe in that.
Yep. Good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think a lot of my questions have been answered. I did have just a comment and making sure that we were talking about making sure that the communication of those schools that do continue orchestra programs is communicated to parents that are moving in. But I also think that we need to even broaden that. I think that our community needs to know those things, because as realtors show homes to a family that maybe already has a child that they have already private lessoned into that pathway, I think that it's important that they also know. So I think that we even need to expand that even further. I think that once those decisions are made, that we really need to make that kind of those campus forward thinking as far as communication into our community. I think we absolutely would be remiss and not to our own good if we didn't do that. The other thing is, I'm missing something, because band and choir have decreased, but orchestra has increased. Is it only increased in the newer programs? And so what we're not looking at is those newer programs. And has it just not increased to the point to where it's sustainable?
Yes, ma'am, to the last part, I believe. So the overall increase is modest, and it's reflected, you know, we did kind of the 11-year snapshot. That was an enrollment comparison of 10 middle school orchestra programs, and now we have 15. But if you imagine the 15 glasses of water, 7 of them are half full, you know, even at this point in time. So in some cases, they've been half full for 5 years. In some cases, they've been half full for 10 or 15 years.
And then is this the trend of decline? Is that something we continually monitor for band and choir? I mean, is this a 10-year down the road situation that we could be in there?
I think in the places that we're seeing it, it's sort of reflective of the campus enrollment trend as well. So those places that we've seen a demographic shift in enrollment downward, places we used to have a triple C middle school, a double C middle school, there's a natural decline already. And if there's an increase in choice over a natural decline in enrollment, then that's certainly a possibility.
And I think that might have been my only questions that were not answered. Actually, the .5 teachers, do we have .5 and .5? We have a teacher that has 2 campuses.
We have.
How many of those teachers do we have?
We have 2 of those orchestra teachers that are .5 somewhere and elsewhere, and then we have 4 orchestra teachers that are .5 standalones. So they are just .5 teachers.
But those 2 have dual fall concerts, dual spring concerts, dual UIL, do all that. Okay. Ooh, okay.
They're really hard to keep. I mean,
I was going to say, do we have do they have a drastic turnover? I mean, I just went
They
into
are extremely difficult to keep. They are also extremely difficult to replace. So I'm with Dr. Coburn on this particular matter.
It must be big if Dr. Warner chimed in.
Okay. Those were my only concerns that I didn't really hear answers to. So thank you all so much for not only your work, but just the presentation that you provided tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Very good. And I'm going to look and I see somebody here. Okay. So Mr. Ball, finance report is up next.
Thank you, Ms. Sells. Trustees, Dr. Rath. As John Martin makes his way to the microphone, I'll introduce the others who are here. We have Mr. Chris Settle, who is one of our bond counsel attorneys who's with the firm of McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton. And we also have Mr. Michael Martin, who's with Hilltop Securities. And so hopefully between John Martin and the 2 in the audience, we can address any questions the board might have over this item and the next item. The item that's before us right now is the item about calling a portion of the bonds that become callable on August 15th of this year. We talked about this in the previous work session, and based on the board's feedback the first time we talked about it, we've increased the amount that we're recommending the board call to $5,555,000. That gets all of a particular tranche of these bonds, so that it's more of a cleaner break. And so what you have is you have 3 schedules. One is the current debt service. If we don't do the call, then the second one is the bonds that would be redeemed if the board were to call these, and that shows you there that the total debt service on those bonds would be $6,788,200 if we didn't call them. And then the last schedule is what would be remaining outstanding after that call. And so it seems like a pretty easy thing we can redeem $5.55 million in bonds and save $6.788 million in total debt service over the remaining life. And so I think that pretty well sums up this proposal, and we do have this listed as an action item for next Monday night's meeting. And part of that item would be for the board to just approve the legal documents that's provided in this package, which is the actual resolution calling those bonds. And of course, Mr. Settle is here with our bond counsel firm if the board has any questions about those. And once I've left something out of that, Mr. Martin, I think it would be time to entertain questions from the board on this particular item.
Okay, first up is Ms. Protznick.
I'm all for it. 18. Let's say I like that math equation. Easy.
Ms. Ms. Hessen, nothing. Ms. Cox?
I like it. It's a great idea. I just want some more water.
Ms. Timish?
No.
No
Thank you so
questions?
much. I
Mr.
appreciate
Miller?
it.
No questions, John.
And just thank you again. Thank you for the presentation, and I have no questions either. So all for it. So moving on.
Okay. So that we will have an action item on that one next Monday, as well as this item. This item is about the proposed new money bond sale, if you will, for $125 million. We discussed this one in previous work session as well. We've also presented the board with cash flow projections showing the need for that. We've looked at various scenarios. One didn't have a lot of impact on the tax rate, and the other one, the scenario of what could be sold without a tax increase, resulted in about a third of the bond proceeds from what we're looking at on the $125 million. So based on all of those conversations and looking at those scenarios, we are recommending a sale of $125 million. We believe that will provide us with the cash needed to fund the projects that the board has really already authorized us to proceed with in terms of the design stage. And what hasn't been discussed before is the type of sale that would be recommended and the makeup of the underwriting team. And we are proposing that this sale be in the amount of $125 million, but if it be conducted as a negotiated sale, and we have the underwriting team that we would propose to the board and recommend to the board, and that would be Piper Jaffray as the senior manager, and BOK Securities and RBC Capital Markets as the two co-managing firms. And really, as the board may recall, we had a process where we had a selection process for underwriting firms, and we recommended 6 firms to the board. The board approved the 6 firms. We used 3 of those firms last summer in the new money bond sale, and so this team is made up of the other 3 firms, and we believe that Piper Jaffray, of those 3 firms, probably has the best ability at this point in time to serve as the senior manager. And we also have we've looked at the property values, and up in as recent as Friday, we're tracking the reports that are provided to us by the Denton Central Appraisal District, and as of Friday, last Friday, the 31st of May, our property values at the same point in time are exactly the same percentage increase from the prior year as they were last year, and so we're not seeing anything at this point that would indicate any deviation from the pattern that we've seen of property value increases. And just as a reminder, our values went up 8.54% in 2018 from the previous year, and it appears at this point in time that we're on track to that same level. Certainly there's still some water to flow under the bridge between now and July 25th when the certified roll comes out, but we're not seeing anything at this point that would provide any reason to believe that it's significantly different from that trend. And that said, the proposed sale that's before the board would result in a tax increase for 1 year of about $0.015, and then in the second, third year, the value or the rate would actually go down below where it is now. And so we do believe that this is consistent with what was told to the voters. And the other thing that is in the proposed bond sale order would be the parameters, and in order for this to be a negotiated sale, the board would need to delegate the authority to execute the documents associated with that within parameters, and this is consistent with what we've done in previous years, previous sales. And so the parameters that are recommended are that the principal amount would not exceed $125 million, that these would be 20-year bonds, so that would put the final maturity not to be later than August 15, 2039, and the maximum true interest cost would not exceed 3.5%. So we've covered the parameters, the underwriting team, and the principal amount of the bonds. And so I think we've also covered the potential tax rate increase. So I think, John, unless I've left something out of that, it would be time to take questions from the board.
Okay. Ms. Hassett?
I actually have no questions, but I thought maybe you should remind the board that the INS rate isn't subject to the same tax 3.5% increase. Property values. There's no limitation placed on us with current AB3 and the property tax issues.
Yes, that's a great point, Ms. Hassett. The limitations, as we understand it, on the future tax levy growth only have to do with the M&O portion of the levy, not the debt service portion of the levy. That's a great point. Thank you for that reminder.
Thank you, Ms. Hassett. Ms. Cox?
I was just curious why the negotiated sale? I mean, is that
we're hoping to take advantage of this crazy bond market right now. It's extremely volatile. The market right now is pricing in 3 to 4 rate cuts between now and year end. So it's real volatile. We want to make sure we take full advantage. Last year we benefited hugely from that by being able to do a shorter call on some of those bonds and so forth. You just can't get that flexibility on a competitive sale.
Yeah, if I might add to that, Ms. Cox, Mr. Martin and his firm, as well as the 3 firms we used last year in that sale, we worked during the auction period and made some game time adjustments that resulted, I believe, in a lower true interest cost over the life of those bonds, because we had the ability, as we saw the bids come in and some of the areas where bids weren't coming in, we were able to make some adjustments that I believe resulted in a much better result for the district. And we would not have had that opportunity of a competitive sale.
And to add to that with a negotiated sale, the calendar that you have in your packets, that's a targeted date. So if we start getting up to when we come back from Independence Day and it's just, the market's gone sideways on us and we need to sit back or something's going on at that point in time, we have the ability to do that. And that's thanks to the parameter sale that you all are authorizing, considering, next Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cox.
It's just a flexibility
Yeah, okay.
in a volatile market.
Ms. Timish?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Miller?
So I to Ms. Cox's point, I actually kind of agree with what you're saying, and I think so. The manager, which is different than the manager from last year, right?
Yes.
Was the manager last year RBC or somebody like that?
It was
J.P. Morgan Chase.
J.P.
Morgan Chase, Citibank, and Raymond James. So, yeah, those were the 3. You qualified 6, so we're letting those guys sit down this time and giving the other 3 a shot. That's just the recommendation.
And to the earlier point of the increase in property values, understanding that 3.5 is limited M&O, but we projected lower. If you look at those out years, I'm trying to find the form here. We actually projected a lower property assessed values.
Correct.
In
That's
the future
correct.
dates,
We
right?
we were using, I think, if you're talking about the one that was distributed in 2017 as part of the information package to the public, I believe we were projecting, we were using 6% in year 1, and then it went down to about 2% in the out years.
And we're basically emulating that in this tax rate, in the potential tax rate adjustment.
In the latest forecast that we have, we've used 8% for the values that will come to us on July 25th, because we had 8.5% last year.
and then we show a reduced potential in the future, which gives us a conservative posture on that.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Lasan, do you have any questions?
No, sir. Would you like some chocolate?
Ms. Prosnick?
Yes. So how this underwriting team was chosen was just, these are the other three. There was no that, BOK's doing some great stuff, or Piper Jaffrey's doing some stuff, or Chase. We just said 3 and 3.
We actually believe Piper Jaffray, in fact, we just got some information very recently that they are, in terms of volume of transactions, one of the leaders in the state right now. So that, I think that was a determining factor in that. BOK continues to do good work across the state. They also employ the gentleman who's doing all the projecting of the templates for districts to project revenues based on House Bill 3. Has been doing that for a number of years, and he is an employee of BOK, so it makes sense to us to utilize them occasionally in transactions. And that said, we believe they do good work as well in the bond underwriting. And the same can be said for RBC. They're all 6 of these firms are great firms. And we really don't believe we could go wrong with any of the 6 firms.
I'll just speak for myself that when I approved the 6, it wasn't just that everybody got the same bite of the apple. It was whoever was going to perform best got the bite of the apple. My personal 2 cents. What is the current rate right now? Because we have 3.5 is our parameter. What's the current rate?
Yeah, that's the max. I mean,
I know, but just so what, I mean, and I know it's a crystal ball, but I guess I'm just asking.
Yeah, we're selling over a month away, so, today, I'd suggest to you you're probably about 2 3/4.
So is there a limited opportunity? It's great interest rate, don't get me wrong, but our refunding opportunity is probably not going to be that great at that rate because rates are so low.
I'm sorry, Ms. Partakine.
Well, so in 10 years, when we have our refunding opportunity, my point
the
is
ability, to your point, to get another bite of the apple.
Right.
Okay, from your standpoint.
From my standpoint.
Right. From an issuer standpoint, yeah, the ability. So what ends up happening here is you're structuring the couponing or the interest rates versus the yields.
Right.
So the way these are being marketed so much are these 5% institutional rates that we see. That's what happened to us last year as we got into, so we had.
Short sales.
Yes, that's right. So we got into a 5-year call because they were wanting those 5%. So we wanted to get a shot at those so we didn't have to keep paying 5%. We might be able to refund those out at 3%.
Okay.
So we'll have to see when we get to that point. But it depends on how the pricing works out at that point in time. If we have all 4s, 4% bonds, 4% coupons here or interest rates, it's going to be less. The refunding is not going to be as pretty as it would if there were 5%.
Yeah.
So, but you also compare your overall cost of funds. When we go through these numbers, Michael and a number of the other analysts and numbers guys out there that they're running through what they call a KIC, which is a yield to maturity. It's kind of a complicated deal, and you're trying to figure out overall what's it worth if you're going to be what's the value if you're going to call them, and or would it be worth what's the value if you hold them to maturity? So there's a give and take. I wouldn't be surprised if we had some of these bonds that are discounted bonds, where we see 3% bonds out there. So we're probably never going to we're going to hold those to maturity more than likely.
Thank you.
And I don't have any questions. Mine were answered, so I appreciate you. No other thoughts or questions? We'll move on in the agenda. Mr. Ball, you're up again.
Okay, I believe this item is the one that has to do with the resolutions related to minimum fund balance. And what this item, the reason for this item is because TEA has changed the parameters that they are using to score us on the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas are the first program that will be effective in the year 2020-21. And at that time, it will be based on a 3-year average of the changes in the 2 categories of fund balance that are called assigned and unassigned. And as the board may recall, a year or so ago, we just adopted a resolution putting those, our board's minimum fund balance policy in the category, the one category that exists other than the 2 that TEA is going to use, and that's the committed category. And so what's being recommended now is for the board to uncommit the fund balance that was committed in the previous resolution, and then turn right around and do the same thing for the category of assigned fund balance. And the difference in those categories is that the committed category can only be committed by action of the governing body, and it can only be uncommitted by action of the governing body. The assigned category can be done at the discretion of the superintendent if the board chooses to delegate that authority. And if we don't do this, we will not get the points in that. This is indicator number 6 on the new first requirements that will be effective, and so it will hamper us and likely prohibit us as a district from receiving the highest category in the first rating. And so that's the reason for this. It's just being proactive and responding to the changes that TEA is having in the first rating, and recognize that it may give some trustees a little discomfort to go to a category with really what some might view as a lower level of commitment, I guess. But the choice is to either stay like we are and not get the highest rating on the first rating, or make this move and give our district the opportunity to receive those level of points. So that's really what this is about, and it's simply an opportunity to continue getting the highest rating on the first report. And be happy to try to answer any questions the board might have themselves.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ball. Ms. Cox?
Thank you, Mr. Ball. So I'm just curious, what happens if we don't do this? And then is this something we're going to have to then go back next year and commit again?
I think that's possible. Of course, when we made the recommendation to use the committed category, we had no idea at that time that TEA would change the first requirement. So we're not in any better position to predict what they may do in the future now. But I think the advantage to this is it does give the superintendent the ability to respond, and I think we all know the superintendent well enough to know he's not going to do something of this magnitude without some level of consultation with the board. But it does give the district the flexibility to score the points that are maximum in this indicator on the first report. In fact, we may be in a spot, because it is a 3-year average, where we're already a year out of compliance. But in discussions with our auditor, who happens to sit on this committee, by the way, the partner in Whitley Penn that's in charge of our audit is actually on this advisory committee with TEA. So that's why we have this information at the time that we do. So that's to say, I'm not sure that we're in any better position to predict the future than we were.
Ms. Timish?
When did TEA make this change?
It's being made right now, and because Selena Sarasaris, who is our audit partner, is on the committee that's made this recommendation.
So they're making the recommendation now, and we still might be out of compliance.
That's correct.
Wow.
It's the
That just
TEA
ma-
map.
It just makes
Sorry.
no sense to me. not from an LASD standpoint, I appreciate how we're all
I
trying
share your view on that. I'm not
So,
there.
okay, so no, I understand the need for this, and I mean, I think that our rating's been important in a reflection of the integrity of the district. Sounds like.
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Ball, remind me, does the first rating impact our bond rating or the position of the states, not the position of their backing of the bonds in any fashion?
I would say there's probably not a significant weighting on the first rating, and I don't think any of the bond rating calls I've been on in my career, I can't remember one in which the first rating came up. What they do want to know about is, does the district have a policy related to minimum fund balance? And this would not change that. It just changes the category in which that designation would be reflected on the district's balance sheet. So I think it's more about public confidence in what we're doing. And I think that's really just like the academic accountability ratings, some would argue are for shoring up public confidence in the schools. I would say the same would be the case for the financial rating.
I don't think I have any other questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. LaSalle?
No questions.
Ms. Prosnick?
I find it ironic that we created the policy so that we could get a better bond rating, and now we're going to have to turn around to change that policy to
It's
satisfy.
the first rating.
To satisfy the first rating, so I just find that slightly ironic. To me, it's just Peter or Paul.
Ms. Hassett?
I just had a question. Do you think that this had relation to the new ESSA requirements on financial reporting for school districts? Does this have anything to do with TEA's interpretation of ESSA?
I don't know that I have any insight into why they are making this change. I think that's possible, but I certainly don't have any inside information to confirm that.
I don't have anything. Thank you, Mr. Wall, on that. And so I think you're up again.
Okay, and this is the topic about hazardous bus routes. And so, as the board may recall, we've talked about this at a previous work session. We talked about the rubric that was used for scoring, and the board provided us with some input on that, and we did make those changes. What we have not done, though, let me just start with the conclusion. What's recommended tonight is to leave all the routes that were served in the 18-19 school year unchanged, and the recommendation is to add 2 routes that are considered hazardous that exclusively relate to either the Mill Street opening or the retirement of the Hedrick campus, and where those students would go. So that'll kind of give you the end of the story before we get into the discussion of the routes. But what you have is a PowerPoint with probably 90 pages that we're not going to go through tonight unless y'all really want to. What I would do is just point you to the 2 new routes, and there are some routes that have different destinations where they might have been going to Central Elementary last year. They would just be going to Mill Street, or they were going to College Street last year, and now the destination would be Mill Street. But the pickup locations and the route themselves are not changing. So we really just have 2 new routes that we're recommending, and those are I've got them marked on here, but I don't have them marked on that one. So this is one of them. This is a destination change on this one. This is a route that was last year went to Lewisville Elementary. This year the destination campus will be Central, but it doesn't change the pickup location, and it doesn't change the reasons that the route was designated as hazardous. Then the next slide is this slide is, just to orient you, this is the neighborhood really right next door to Hedrick Elementary. And those students would be going to DeGan Elementary, and because they would have to cross Main Street, 1171, that route is recommended for designation as a hazardous route. And so the recommendation is that we would provide these students with bus transportation to DeGan based on what you see in the light tan there. So that's the first of the two new hazardous routes, and then I'll just scroll pretty rapidly through these. The last one, and these are in campus number order, and the campus number for Mill Street is 144, so it's going to be the last elementary slide here. And this is a route that previously went to College Street, and this is another one of those with a destination change. Now it will go to Mill Street, and so that's really the changes that are being recommended in the hazardous routes. And on the routes for the secondary, there are no changes recommended and all of these are from the routes that were served for the 18-19 school year. So with that said, I guess the recommendation is to add these two new routes to the existing routes, and to recognize that we have heard the board's input into the rubric, and we'll incorporate that into how we score the routes for the 1920 routes when we bring those to the board for recommended changes next year, if any changes. So be happy to answer any questions the board might have at this point.
Okay. Ms. Timish?
Thank you so much for this information, Mr. Robb. And I appreciate you, because I was trying to figure out which ones were new, and I caught those two. It's really helpful when they have like a pinpoint of where the campus is, because there's some of them I'm trying to scroll around and make sure, okay, looking north, south, east, west. It is, some of them had it and some of them didn't. But in the future, if they can just include where the campus is, and all the high schools, they included where the campus was. But it just helps when you're trying to orient.
So those are great suggestions, and we've already had that conversation. You know, it's as far as I know, the international convention when looking at a map is that north is at the top, and all of these are not oriented in one manner. And so we've talked about we'll make that change, and we've also talked about putting a pin. Some indicator of where the campus, the destination campus is. And so thank you for that input. That just reinforces what we've already
some of our streets curve, so then
did.
I'm trying to figure out which direction are we going. So I don't have all the streets memorized, but I appreciate that. No other questions.
Thank you, Ms. Timish. Mr. Miller?
No questions for me.
Ms. Lassam?
No questions, other than if you're going to add math notes, you might also want to look at some of these polygons. Like this one is just this triangle that kind of cuts through. It just bugs me, that's all.
Well, and that reminds me of one other discussion that we have had is, because we've noticed some of these things as well, and apparently when this endeavor first began, there was an attempt to have a different shade of the shape that overlays the map for each one. And so we've asked ourselves, why are we trying, we're running out of colors, so I think what we're going to do is settle on a shape, or a color for the shapes that's easy to see and clearly
like yellow
designates the hazardous area, and then all of them will be the same. That's our current thinking. So unless the board has other thoughts on that point.
I think we should take a vote on what color.
Yeah.
Only kidding.
I like that. Ms. Prosnick?
I had given a note that obstructed sidewalks had been in the previous rubric. Had you done
that? Was the input that we got from you. We've added that back into it. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Hassett? And I think my only question is we're still continuing the policy of notifying parents when their children are on.
We're doing that twice a year, at the beginning and at the end of the year. And that's the reason for this being on the June agenda, so that we can send those notices out now for the end of the school, and then again right after school starts for these rounds.
Thank you. And Ms. Cox, I forget you every, I think it's just, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on in our agenda, technology report, Mr. Colbeck.
Thank you, Mrs. Sells. This is, actually the first two items are connected, but essentially what this is, we've brought forward a couple different phases of our security project. This is phase 3. We've been in the process of implementing phase 2, which is getting completed this coming spring. Essentially what this would do is provide coverage to critical areas that are not currently covered. It would provide the structured cabling that we would need for up to 470 new drops, and would also provide the hardware and installation for 394 interior cameras and 168 exterior cameras. This was a project that, as you know, was included in the safety and security category of the 2017 bond program. We've been working with procurement to do an RFP for the cameras, hardware, the cable and installation, as well as any other products and services that we need. We're reviewing the responses for this, and we'd be looking to bring an action item forward next Monday. Any questions on the camera part of it? Matt, Mr. Garrett's here as well if you have any specific questions specific to the safety and security part of it.
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Miller.
I don't think I have a question on this item because it's a continue of phases, but I do have a question that I think when we have our next security discussion in executive session that I would like to discuss. So I'd just like to make note of it.
Okay, duly noted. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Lasan?
No questions.
Ms. Prosnick?
No questions at this time.
Ms. Hassett?
When do you think phase 3 will be completed?
Good question.
Ballpark.
I'm gonna have Matt come up.
Well, I'll just say fall of 2019.
Go for it, yeah.
That's not my question.
Ms. Cox?
So when you say spring, what does that mean? Like for time frame for phase 2
It was
completion?
completed spring of, it was completed April.
April, okay. Thank you. No other questions?
And Ms. Timish, do you have any questions? None for me. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay, Mr. Colbeck?
All right, the other item on the agenda related to this is the actual storage that's needed for this project. If you recall, in the earlier phases, we had talked a little bit about the storage that's required for the cameras to be written to, and what we're up against adding the third phase is really a couple things. One is we're going to be up against a capacity issue based upon what we currently have for storage, and also we're going to be up against end of life on the current hardware that we have. So we've really held off on replacing that because what we have had has been working for us. So essentially what this would do is provide the storage that we need for our cameras, and really the cameras as well as the storage piece. As this piece is completed, it would really wrap up all the needs in the area of the security project for this bond project. The procurement on this is a little different. We are working with procurement to do an RFQ for the specific storage that's listed, and again, this would be an item that we'll be bringing forward next week for an action item.
Ms. Lasan?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Prosnick?
How long do we store data on our cameras?
It varies. There's different requirements. So for example, you have like the special ed requirements, and those have changed. Those are a little bit longer. I think those are held for one.
The special ed cameras are 3 months.
3 months.
General ed, what we consider the other normal security cameras, 21 days.
Thanks, ma'am.
Any other questions?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Ms. Hassett?
No question.
Ms. Cox? Ms. Timish?
No, ma'am.
And
No
Mr. Miller?
questions.
No questions, and none for me. Thank you for bringing this to us. And continuing on.
All right. The next item is regarding campus video streaming systems and related products. we brought forward an information item last month talking about the need to replace some aging video streaming technology that we have out in the campuses. And really what we're trying to do is put together basically a kit that can replace the current hardware that we have on campus right now. That kit would really include, it would reuse some equipment that's currently there. It would reuse, for example, the tripod, the carts, I think one of the microphones, but we would be adding in the technology that would allow us to provide a video streaming and capture solution at the campus that would be HD, better quality, would have new cameras, new microphone, encoders, and also mixing board. So we were able to demonstrate that to our campus administrators during Principal U. One of the nice things about what we're putting together in this package is it complements what we put in for the encoding servers in our data center early on in this project. And essentially what that allows us to do is take that video that's captured, put it up on a website, you can stream it. Some campuses can use that, for example, for streaming morning announcements. It could be streaming a live event. There's a lot of different use cases for that. But essentially what this would do is give us the mechanism to provide the hardware needed to refresh the streaming systems on each campus. The work on this would be done by our technology staff, and the goal would be to get this stuff ordered and get it set up so we can have it put in for the start of school. This also would bring the video streaming project that was in the bond to a close once it's completely implemented, and we don't expect this to go over the budget, and we would be bringing this forward as an action item next Monday as well.
Okay, perfect. Ms. Prosnick?
So I'm trying to imagine what this looks like on a campus. So would this be a streaming service on their iPads?
No, it wouldn't. You'd set up, there's a couple ways you could do it. You could set up and I'll give you an example of some campuses will set up like a temporary, not really, it could be temporary or it could be a little bit longer term, where they know every day they're going to go in and do the announcements. One of the things that we try to set up in this case is that it's easy to use and you can replicate it without a lot of setup. So in that case, the equipment's already there. It's almost like a preset. They can come in, they can hit record, it's quick, and it streams, almost like a little set. But that technology is still flexible enough that if you wanted to move the card into a different space, let's say you had a guest speaker come in and you wanted to actually stream that or stream it to another campus or record it, you'd be able to do that as well. You just have to move the cart, move the tripod and the equipment. So it's flexible enough to move, but if you're going to set it up for doing, let's say, things like announcements or video, especially like, for example, one, I think, use case for this as well is capturing content that you might be able to incorporate with digital signage. So, for example, if you had it could be, for example, morning announcements, or it could be something that your student government group is working on, and they want to incorporate that video. The key is getting it captured, making sure it's easy and portable. So this solution would really be able to do both.
I'm curious to actually see it in action because I'm having a hard time seeing how that works in elementary school, for example.
Would it help you to provide an example?
Yes.
In the coming week?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Ms. Hassett? Ms. Cox?
So I'm kind of with Ms. Prosnick. I'm trying to wrap my hands around this because I'm not real interested in, just to do the announcements. I mean, you can do the announcements over the microphone. I'm wanting to know what are the benefits in the classroom for this expense. So how is it going to be utilized in the classroom to help students?
In the classroom, I think one example with the announcements would be, I think, getting kids involved, getting engaged. I've seen, for example, at the elementary schools where that's something that happens almost every day. So you're kind of showcasing students through video versus just having a principal, for example, on the PAs giving the announcements. I've seen, for example, where you have the Watchdogs or Dudes program where parents have come in and they'll do that video spot. I think as far as outside of a set spot where you might record if it's in a library, I think setting that up in a portable environment where you knew you wanted to capture something and archive it. One of the problems we have right now, for example, is if you're just using, for example, an iPad, you might have good video, but you cannot capture good audio. So what this allows us to do with the combination of the mixer and the mics is that you can actually capture good audio with the video. So if you had, for example, a guest speaker, or if you wanted to record an event in a classroom or someplace specific in a school, it would give you the right technology to do that.
I think one of the things that we could look forward to doing too is with digital citizenship, some of the topics that we've talked about, even when it came up with the study skills conversation about how do you stream content to parents to help archive content where parents could learn to, this solution being a lot more flexible than how they currently do things, where it's a locked station where it stays in one place, where you could go to a classroom, teach a lesson, capture that lesson, stream it not only within the school building but stream it on their website, gives us some more flexibility with content that we haven't had with the current system. So just a consideration there as well.
But who controls like the streaming? Because I sure wouldn't want our kids being out being streamed by other people that
But
can.
our elementary schools are doing this now. They're streaming the announcements into the classrooms at the moment. So this is just a new portable version of what we're already currently doing.
And it streams it up.
Classrooms only.
It streams it up through a website, so every campus would have basically their own URL. So, for example, once that video is streaming, you could just go to that particular web page, and it's in some regard multicasting the video. What we're adding to this piece is the ability to actually store the video as like video on demand, so that if a campus recorded something, they would actually get a list of files based upon the date that it was recorded. So if they wanted to put it out on a website, or they wanted to put it in Canvas, or if you wanted to put it someplace other than just a live stream, they'd have the ability to do that.
Some of the teaching that goes on at the start of the school year, even when you're trying to get parents acclimated to drop off and pick up and homework procedures and help supports, now we could actually capture that. We could actually stream it. Let's say you're a parent that is working during the day, which many of us are in that category, and you can't make it there. You could catch the stream or even the archive stream of what that experience has looked and sounded like, or even some of the Parent U sessions that our campuses are holding. So, and all the content currently goes through an adult on the campus. Morning announcements are done in conjunction with a teacher that's running them, or the principal, or an assistant principal. And if there was other content added, you'd be working with the classroom teacher before you put anything out there.
So can anybody log into the website? Like any?
Don't you have to be intentional? The campus would have to be intentional in order to provide it beyond the campus level.
You would have to,
Absolutely.
right now, you'd have to be intentional. That's not a public-facing site. It could be, I mean, we could make it public-facing, but right now it's not. It's intranet. But the idea is if you had a quality piece of video that you wanted to share publicly, you'd have access to go back and get that and distribute it.
But, and then would we also be able to have this at the career centers? Are we looking at that?
Is Chris? Yeah. Is that would be separate from the career centers already do quite a bit with video. They have some pretty amazing
So
programming there, but this
like
could
where
be.
I can see it being utilized.
This is something that can be. The idea on this is that it could be used in a way where you don't have to be in the video arts program to know how to use it. It should be very quick and easy to hit record and capture.
Yes,
Anything
and
to add on
the
that?
quote that we've done is for 70 kits, so all 69 campuses, and then one for the new elementary school when it's built as well. So we're already ordering the hardware for that. So, and one thing I will add to what Brian was saying, the current system that we have is similar to what we're looking to implement. It's just a much more high-quality system, and it will be much easier to use with the new streaming system that we put in place. But we use this to live stream the event that was at Briar Hill last year, the NASA event. It was used to live stream that event. That's the kit that we used. So we'd be able to do things like that with this kit moving forward.
Okay, no further questions.
Ms. Timish?
All right, thank you. So that was on mine was CTE, just not even for even some of the medical classes and things that they're doing. So you will put it in, it'll be built in with Tech West, and then it'll be added to Tech East, is what you're saying.
Correct. The idea is that it's mobile. So it's the components, if you could think of almost like a little audio-visual cart. All the items should really be on there, where if you set it up, you could set it up kind of as a preset, so to speak, where you can go in there and quickly hit record. If you want to wheel it down the hall, you just grab the card, unplug everything, grab the card, plug it back in, set up your camera shot, and you're ready to go.
So, for example, when I did, and I can't remember the formal name of it, but went to Stewart's Creek and they had their ribbon cutting for like their zoo. Like the Sweet Kids spent all of this time on it, but it was the with their iPad, but it was the audio part of it, and they
Correct.
knew it. They knew what they wanted to do in their heads, and they could not make it work with all the pieces that they know how to do, and it's amazing. So this would solve that
This
problem.
is going to improve the audio greatly. I mean, I see really awesome examples sent quite often. Say, hey, look what our kids are doing.
Right.
And it's great. And all the components are coming together. It's just that the quality is really poor.
And that's exactly what happened.
It's usually the audio.
Yeah, and that's exactly, and they were so sweet, and they knew, like, but and so that was the part that she was almost in tears that she'd spent so much time on, but she couldn't get that piece to work. And I love the idea that it can be streamed, because there were some grandmas and grandpas there, because parents couldn't be there, and the idea that the parents could have been interactive during that piece, I think would have been really neat. So thank you, that was it.
Mr. Miller?
Was this an information item?
This was an information item.
Last
month,
meeting.
I think.
So I think I asked a question and got that answered, right? So I appreciate that. And I think I'm in agreement with the audio piece. My son does a lot of projects, paid projects, and one of the things I've learned is the video is one thing. He's got a lot of great video equipment, and it's like taking a video with your iPhone and posting it. The audio is terrible. So I think to be very qualitative in nature with some of the initiatives or campus-based projects or tech centers, it's a good idea.
Ms. Lasan?
I don't have any questions other than to say, I think I'm the only one here who has a kid in elementary school, and they do those announcements every day, and it's the kid. I mean, I think the principal is behind the camera, but it's the kids, that are doing awards, and they're doing all sorts of different things. And the other thing I think of is every year they try to stream, I think just like Facebook Live, the Veterans Day ceremony that they do at Heritage, which is really great. And so stuff like that will be really awesome to share, not to mention, Dr. Rapp, you were talking about, what I was thinking is about all those orientations, the second grade, third grade orientation, parent orientation. That would be amazing. I think it's one of those things that if the principals get this in their hands, they'll just kind of be like no limit to what they can do with it.
Okay, thank you. But we currently have technology for.
Yeah, that was.
And what does that look like? Is that that stationary piece? Is it attached to something where it doesn't move?
It's on a cart right now, and that was put in with the 2008 bond. So that stuff is
the current
6, 7 years old.
Yeah, the current kits are over 6 years old, and a lot of we have about 25 campuses that use the current kits every day. Mostly elementary schools, some middle schools, the high schools really don't use it at all. But that's because most of the campuses, I think, don't use it, don't know that they've had it, either because they have a new principal or the person that did use it when it was first put in has left, and the new person came in and doesn't know how to use the system. And there's some differences between the systems across the campuses as well. And so I think putting in the same system across the district with brand new hardware that's high quality will make it the buy-in rate will be much higher. When we showed the current system, which is what some elementary schools and middle schools are doing at Principal U, every principal indicated that they wanted the system and that they seemed excited about the possibilities for it.
And so the installation is a change out of the existing. It's just on the cart, and so really the installation is more software.
No,
or
it's
hardware?
it's going to be some hardware. They're right now for lack of a better term, the computer that's on there is the encoder. So I mean, if you could just think about a non-HD camera right now, but that's what they're using. It's a non-HD camera, goes into that encoder, and this stuff it's slow, it's old, the quality's not good. So when Chris references it's not being used much at the high schools, I mean, part of that is why. So I think putting in the kit, you'd have the camera, you'd have an encoder, you'd have a microphone,
and the
mixer to bring the audio in with the mic. Or right now, I think we're missing the mixer part currently.
Yeah, everything's done through the computer right now.
Yeah. So the mixer is really going to elevate the audio.
I assume there's going to be training.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, we're going to create some training
You
videos.
said mixer, I thought,
I do have a question. What's the lifespan for this equipment? Since the other is already done in less than 6 years, I'm kind of curious what the lifespan for this is.
I would look at it very similar to a computer, and that 5 to 6 year range is what you're getting out of this stuff. And I would say I would expect 6 years from now, when you have whatever 4,000p interlaced or whatever it's going to be, people are going to look at that and say, man, they're just using HD cameras. So it's the nature of the technology.
Anything else? Any more comments or questions? None? Okay, last item. You're still up.
More.
Oh.
One more. All right. All right. So if you recall back in February when we did our technology update, one of the items that we included in that information item was a proof of concept we were doing for data analytics. And we shared at that time, really going back and telling the story about having limitations on how do you capture some of the usage analytics, the way we had our iPads configured, and some of the missing elements that we did not have in place. So as we've been rolling out our security pieces, we've been very intentional about making sure the pieces that we put in will help complement that and provide the data that we had. And what we showed in February was visualizations of a proof of concept that we used through an application called Splunk. And at that time, I can't remember the number, David, was it 24, 26 campuses?
I don't think it was that many.
Well, you're right. In the POC, I think we had 7 or 8, but I think when we were presented, we had the underpinnings of what we needed to be deployed at, I think, about 24 or 26 campuses. So since then, we've continued to roll that out every couple of weeks. We bring on a new campus. I try to give an update in our weekly update to the board. But those requirements have been in place. So where we're at this point is we got to roll the POC out of a POC and into production. So we've been working with procurement to really secure the licensing and some of the services that we're going to need for that moving forward. So our plan is to bring forward a recommendation item for this that would provide the licensing and services that we need to put it into production and not just a proof of concept. But we plan on bringing that forward next Monday.
Okay. Let's have questions, Ms. Hassett?
Not until I see the recommendation.
Ms. Cox?
So would this be able to provide us more of the data that we've been looking for and asking?
Correct. So one of the limitations we've had in the past is that the way the devices are being used, especially being used, to access the internet, all of that was coming from basically one destination. So when you look at it, we could tell devices are being used at home, at school, and for different educational purposes, but we had no idea where, what device, none of that. So how this actually works is that with the security elements that we included in our deployment of the iPads, it matches up the device to the user to the campus. So we can really start breaking down, for example, looking at adoption, looking at which educational resources are being used most heavily where, which grade levels. None of that we could do before. So it was all just in one pool. So quite honestly, I'm super excited about this project. I'm very excited, and it's a ton of data. Just in the process of what we've been ingesting, it's well over 50 gigs of data a day, because you're ingesting all of the log data to actually start indexing it so you can start creating these visualizations. And without having identity, you don't have it. And the other part, to me, not only is the identity important, what this also has provided is a much more secure experience for kids. So we know kids are, for example, going out to a public Wi-Fi or a mall or whatever, where you have open SSIDs. That is not good practice to just connect to this stuff. So what happens now is that when an iPad is off the network, it knows it's off the network, and it creates a secure tunnel back, and it's encrypted. It's an encrypted tunnel, so that's shielding them from whatever else who might be listening on that line or trying to, lurk, so to speak, online. So what's great about that is it creates the security, and at the same time, it gives us the identity both off campus and on campus.
I love this, and Madam President, I would just ask that should this pass, I would love to see a quarterly report, not often, on the data and usage. This is something we've been asking for a long time, so I'm very excited about this.
Wonderful. Ms. Timish?
No questions.
Mr. Miller?
Very excited about this. As a reminder, it's been 5 years ago, actually, this meeting in June, a work session, that we've been talking about this. So I like the idea of a quarterly report. Those of us who were around then, I think there were 3 of us, long time coming, Brian. So, and I know we put a lot of pressure on you and the staff for this. So thank you, and excited to see what it does. I'd also say I like the email about making sure that staff has passcodes on their devices. I think that's a good security measure, an important one that gets forgotten about because of ease of access and use, but important to protect our information.
Ms. Hassan?
No questions.
Ms. Presnick?
So how often will the data be reviewed?
The review of, I don't have the answer to that, possibly quarterly. I mean, we're going to be looking at the data. And how I see us being able to use the data is to really have conversations at the campus level to look at what resources are being used, in having that conversation, or I think around professional learning and what will help with the adoption and make sure technologies are being used. I think the other part of that is what we showed in the proof of concept. I feel like we're just scratching the surface because there's so much data in here, kind of like the district dashboard. You start thinking about, well, what if, could we do this or could we do that? Or, we were trying to come up with some really, I would say, some preliminary metrics. So I think even since we've discussed the or showed some of the visualizations of the proof of concept, we have ideas on how to kind of look at that data in different ways that we can provide it to the campuses. So our plan is to look at it ourselves, but also actually get it to the campus level so that they can see it as well.
And will there be training for the campus leaders to know what to? I can throw data at you all day, and I can make you some really pretty charts and all that kind of stuff. But if I don't know what I'm reading, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, we'll have to provide some training to the campuses, and if you think of for example, EduGens, where you have a visualizations with filters that you can apply, it's very similar, where we basically create a data model, and then you can apply different scenarios. So if you wanted to look at that data and break it down by other variables, assuming the data is structured in the right way, you could, for example, break it down by grade level or demographic or different ways to search data, to tell a story around it. And I think that's what's super exciting about this, because we have not been able to look at this information this way. And, that's also what requires something like Splunk, because of the amount of data, and log data ingestion is what they do. Companies, for example, like EduGens and Data Warehouse, that is not what their specialty is. So I think the tools on the filtering side will be familiar with staff or for administration, but it's going to be a simple view, really a view and apply filters, similar to EduGens.
And one of the things we've talked about with monthly principal meetings that we're talking about with the chiefs is more regular data analysis. Dr. Fitzhugh has that on her list for next school year, and with the dashboard and with this, how do we talk about data more regularly with them?
I'd like to piggyback on that. Also, those communications are pivotal on making sure everybody knows this is not a gotcha.
Yes.
We have to have those conversations to know how to use it and to know why we're collecting it and why we're talking about it, rather than just saying, hey, you're not using this product and someone else is, but do you know this product also has other, to help the district, help the schools, rather than as a gotcha to the schools. And I think it's really, really helpful and key that we have to talk to the schools, and communication.
Is there any way to integrate this into the dashboard?
Possibly, but it would have to be.
We'd have to, after looking at the data and deciding what we decided was that important piece, that would have to be it. But could it be integrated into our dashboard?
David and I have talked about that a little bit, and it would really we'd have to really define the requirements, because the data would have to be put in there based upon a point in time. So how I see Edugence maybe being used is that you could look at like historical trend usage, where you're entering a data point, you know, at this point in time, where the amount of data that's, for example, in our Splunk instance, I don't see us putting that in to Edugence to make meaning of it. It would be setting very specific requirements, putting that data then back into Edugence around a point in time.
Thank you. Anything else? And I believe that that is it. I think that Ms. Hassett covered my questions. I just want to be able to know what I'm looking at when it's brought forth. And I think that that's, and I mirror her sentiment that this is not a gotcha. This is how are we moving forward in making our district and our students better. So just reinforcing that at the campus level. So, yes. Yes. And I will officially add that Ms. Prosnick and Ms. Hassett did join us. I think I mentioned that earlier, but they did join us. And I have those times at 6:20 and 6:42. They joined us, so they were here for the meeting. So we just want to make that a part of the official minutes. If there are no other, anybody have anything else? If not, if there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned. The time is 9:17. Thank you all. Over there with Jamie. Jamie stuff that. So, like on letter.
Here. Even more gifts for you.